Chapter 1316. Mid-Mountain Villa. The space here was very large, and it was indeed suitable for a gathering. Feng Ling had yet to recognize all the people here. After all, there were too many people, and it was too big. She only went in to chat with a few familiar people for a while, before she was squeezed to the side by all the celebrities in Washington's Vanity Fair. When she stood not far away and picked up a glass of wine, she turned back to see an unfamiliar man in his 40s approaching. "Yes, Miss Feng." Feng Ling turned back to glance at the man. Before she could speak, the secretary who walked over with him introduced, "This is CEO E, the host of the banquet in the Mountain Villa." "So you're CEO E?" Feng Ling nodded at him calmly. "All right, nice to meet you." "Nice to meet you, nice to meet you." CEO E politely reached out his hand to Feng Ling. Feng Ling also reached out to shake his hand. Just as she was about to pull it back, she realized that the man had tightened his grip. This was not too obvious, but it was a very obvious hint between the two of them. A man was interested in a woman and wanted to continue communicating. How could Feng Ling, who had been in this circle for more than a year, not understand this hint? She only smiled politely at him and pulled her hand back without a trace. She then clinked glasses with him. "The person in charge of your company was another person in charge. Today is the first time I've met CEO E. In the future, I'll have to rely on your care for business cooperation. Come, let me toast you." The cup was filled with red wine that only exceeded the bottom of the cup. Feng Ling's alcohol tolerance was not good, so she never drank much after entering this circle. She only drank as much as she could. "Miss Feng, you're too polite. Our company and the Feng Corporation are partners who often work together in the American-Chinese business world. If there's anything you need, Miss Feng, you can speak to me at any time." After exchanging a few pleasantries, Feng Ling changed the topic. First, she thanked COE for his kind invitation. Then, she led the topic to the target of financing at the end of the month and the various directions their company wanted to talk about. She did not exchange too many pleasantries and unnecessary affection. Although she had just entered the business world, she was cautious and quiet. CEO smiled at her from time to time. At this moment, someone else came over to greet him. He nodded apologetically at Feng Ling and turned to continue chatting with others. She then glanced at the red wine glass tower in front of her. After confirming that everyone had gotten the wine there and that there was no problem after drinking it, she picked up another glass and held it in her hand in case someone came over to give her a glass of wine. If someone came over to give her a glass of wine, she wouldn't even be able to refuse if they came over to give her a glass of wine. At this moment, her phone vibrated in her pocket. Feng Ling took it out and saw that it was from Qin Shuk. "Is everything okay?" It was 7:30 in the evening. There was still half an hour before 8 o'clock, but Qin Shuk was too worried to sit still. Feng Ling smiled and made a call. After reporting that she was safe, she said that everything would go according to plan. After all, tonight wouldn't be so simple. However, she didn't know much about these methods. She didn't know if she was overthinking or if something would really happen. In short, it was better to be careful. After hanging up the phone, she suddenly heard a commotion at the door. Feng Ling turned around and saw a man in his 60s walking in. Listening to the whispers of the people beside him, she realized that this was a famous big shot in the financial world of Fifth Avenue in Washington. He was the idol of many young entrepreneurs. Feng Ling wasn't familiar with him. In her eyes, her idol in the business world was her mentor, Mr. Zand. There were also two young and beautiful women beside the big boss. They seemed to be about the same age as his granddaughter. The key point was that the two women were holding his arms, one on each side. It was a scene of him hugging beauties in his arms. Feng Ling didn't plan to go over. She was about to look away when she suddenly saw a familiar tall and straight figure from the corner of her eye. Her heart skipped a beat. She focused her gaze and stood rooted to the spot, as though she had been struck by lightning. The man was not as tall and handsome as he used to be when he wore the same black uniform as her. His suit was well ironed, and his figure was tall and straight. He was handsome and dignified, but there was a cold smile on his face that kept people at a distance. This kind of distant and cold attitude did not make him appear particularly arrogant. Instead, there was a kind of indifference and laziness that came after experiencing ostentatious and noisy life, making him look cold and indifferent, but especially charming. Thus, even though he deliberately chose to appear after the big shot of the financial world, he still attracted the attention of the entire audience. However, he clearly didn't like these gazes. His expression was very indifferent as he glanced around. Even when the male assistant beside him said something to him, he also turned a deaf ear. Yu Zheng also could not understand. CEO Li had never accepted this type of dinner invitation. Why would he agree to CEO Yi's invitation at this villa in the middle of the mountain today? The moment Li Nanheng entered, Feng Ling looked away. It was Li Nanheng. Qin Shuk had been stopped by her once, so she definitely wouldn't rashly call him to inform him of this matter. In other words, Li Nanheng was one of the invited guests today. That's right. The Li Corporation's status in the Chinese world in the United States was almost on equal footing with Mr. Mo's Shine Group. In addition, with 11 base behind them, they were an existence that neither the underworld nor the underworld dared to provoke. Although Li Nanheng had left the base, his reputation was still there. This time, the Li Corporation, which never participated in these small projects, had thrown out an olive branch. These people would definitely risk their lives to curry favor with him. Of course, he would not be left behind. But did he know that she was here before he came? He clearly knew what the bet she had made with him was. Yet he still came here to snatch the investment from her. Did he really want to pocket the 1 billion yuan? However, at this moment, Feng Ling suddenly realized that she seemed to have made a stumbling block for herself. If that was the case, if Li Nanheng would personally appear to compete with her every time there was a competition, she would only have a 30% chance of getting the investment. After all, he should be the one the investors should curry favor with. As long as he nodded, who would dare to refuse? At that time, she had only thought about not letting the forces behind him finance him, but she had neglected the Li Corporation's status in the business world. Now looking at Li Nanheng's appearance, she could tell that her chances of winning were very small. Chapter 13-17. By the side, there were 2 daughters brought by a CEO. They stood together and looked in the direction of the door and exclaimed, isn't that the one from the Li Corporation?" The 2 young girls walked over there. Before Feng Ling had time to look back, she heard the 2 girls talking excitedly about the rumors about 11 base. Did all the girls like this kind of man? Li Nanheng is here too? It's really rare. The Li family rarely appears on such occasions, especially Li Nanheng. He has just taken over the Li Corporation and doesn't attend many events in person. It's really rare to see him here. Speaking of which, I've only seen CEO Li once. It was in Los Angeles last time. The Li family's strength and power can't be underestimated, especially Li Nanheng, who has always been mysterious. It seems that he has a lot of projects in his hands and has a close relationship with Shine Group. This kind of person can only be friends. Once we become enemies, we really can't take it. Then why did he suddenly come to such a small banquet? Feng Ling listened to the discussion by the side and turned to the other side expressionlessly. She went to the red wine glass tower and picked up a glass of wine. The wine in this glass was more than the wine on the long table by the side. The wine in this glass was almost half a glass. At this moment, she suddenly heard someone beside Li Nanheng say, "Mr. Li is really better than hearing about it. It's rare to see you in such a place. Nice to meet you." Someone else said, "I heard that Mr. Li rarely has women by his side. Could it be that he's really abstinent to a certain extent? He even brings a male assistant to a banquet. He doesn't even bring a female secretary by his side. Abstinence?" Feng Ling expressionlessly raised her glass and drank the wine in one gulp. Fortunately, not long after, the topic about Li Nanheng's abstinence was politely ended by him with a few words. Li Nanheng whispered a few words to his assistant, Yu Zheng, and turned to chat with the celebrities who came up to him. However, at this time, the socialites who had appeared out of nowhere were all standing there, smiling and listening to their conversation. It was as though they were very happy to stand there and play the role of a vase. Clearly, They seemed very happy to play the role of a vase for Li Nanheng. Sure enough, when she was in 11 base, she was in a different state after leaving the base and entering the business circle. At the very least, there were too many women in this circle. No matter if it was a successful woman, a rich lady, or a business partner, the last thing Li Nanheng lacked was women. However, he only had a male assistant by his side, causing those vases who were attracted to him to be unsure if he was really not interested in women, or if there was something wrong with his sexual orientation. Therefore, they didn't dare to be too arrogant, and could only watch from the side, silently observing and waiting for an opportunity to make a move. However, when she turned around, she could still hear a woman whispering, "I didn't expect Li Nanheng to be so handsome. I thought that a man who has been in the military base for so many years would either be big and silly, or the dark-skinned and average-looking. In short, I always thought that he would be the masculine type. I didn't expect him to be so good-looking. His handsomeness is beyond my imagination. This young master of the Li clan rarely shows up before, so I've never seen him before. I didn't expect him to be so good-looking. I really want to chase after him. Look at how he brought a male assistant to a simple dinner party. It's obvious that he really doesn't keep women by his side. You want to chase after him? Can you catch up? I'm afraid even if you go, you'll hit a wall. That might not be the case. What if he just hasn't met anyone suitable?" Although Feng Ling was wary of COE's motives, at least she wasn't afraid of attending the dinner party. But now, she really regretted it. Perhaps she shouldn't have come. She decided that she had to keep a low profile today. She definitely couldn't let Li Nanheng see her. Based on this man's arrogant behavior, if he saw her here, who knew what would happen? He didn't bring a woman with him, because he only had one woman in his eyes for so many years. As the only woman in his eyes, Feng Ling didn't really want to have this title. She came here today to take the opportunity to talk about the financing. If Li Nanheng was also here, not to mention that it was not good for her to speak now. Even if she spoke, he could shut her up with one sentence. There was already a bet. If he went all out, she probably wouldn't be able to get a single cent of this financing. Then why was she still wasting her time here? She might as well go somewhere else to raise 1 billion yuan. Thinking of this, she put down the glass in her hand and turned to leave. In the end, she walked too fast and did not notice it. She bumped into COE, who had walked close to her at some point in time. The wine glass in COE's hand was knocked over by her and splashed onto his suit. His expression changed as he looked up at him. Sorry. Feng Ling saw that the wine glass in COE's hand was originally very stable. He shouldn't have flipped it, but he had actually splashed it all over him. After a moment of hesitation, she corrected her expression and gave him an apologetic look. I left in a hurry and didn't see clearly. I'm sorry. COE looked at her and smiled. It's fine, it's fine. How about this? I'll help you wipe it first. Feng Ling picked up a tissue from the table to help him wipe the wine stains on his shirt. I'm really sorry, COE. It's okay. COE took the tissue from her hand and held her hand unintentionally. He then smiled at her. My clothes are so dirty. Why don't you accompany me back to my room to change my shirt, Miss Feng? Feng Ling abruptly retracted her hand and looked up at the light in COE's eyes. I'm sorry, I didn't do it on purpose, but COE should change his clothes himself. She paused for a moment and remembered that she was in the business circle, so she couldn't be too straightforward. She simply said, the bathroom is next door. I'll accompany you in to clean it up. How do we clean it? COE lowered his head and shook the red wine stain on his shirt. No matter how we clean it, this shirt is already ruined. We can't go in and wash it before wearing it, right? Why don't we go back to our room and change? My secretary isn't around. Miss Feng, come with me. Then shall I call your secretary for you? Feng Ling still had an apologetic expression, but she had already taken a step back to maintain a proper distance. Her eyes were cold and disgusted. No need. Just accompany me, COE said as he reached out to hold her hand. Dash, babies, if you have monthly votes, vote. Chapter 13:18. Feng Ling looked at COE's outstretched hand. At the same time, She saw the few people nearby who seemed to have noticed what was going on, but did not even look in this direction. She finally knew his plan. The first step was to wait for the willing person to take the bait. If she was unwilling, who knew what would happen next? Why, Miss Feng, you messed up my shirt like this. Are you afraid that I'll do something to you? CEO saw that she had been politely avoiding him, and his gaze turned cold. He sneered and said, "This banquet is still in progress. I'm the host of tonight's banquet. I don't think you want to see me appear so dirty. Do you, Miss Feng?" CEO, I can go back and compensate you with a shirt of the same style or better than this one. As for changing clothes, we're all adults, not children. We have to avoid arousing suspicion. Feng Ling said straightforwardly. I hope CEO won't make things too difficult for me. Miss Feng, you're here to talk about financing today, right? At this moment, CEO's secretary happened to come over with some financing information. After seeing the situation here, he seemed to have listened for a while, and then walked over with a smile. CEO, this is a chance for you to talk to him privately. Other people might not have such treatment. Miss Feng, you don't have to be too careful. Our CEO is very upright. Of course we have to talk about financing. Feng Ling's smile did not reach her eyes. I'll definitely compensate CEO's shirt. How about this? I'll send someone to buy one for you now. Seeing that she was still avoiding talking about going back to his room to change clothes, CEO's gaze turned even colder. Who asked you to buy a shirt? At this moment, CEO's secretary stood by the side and changed her expression. Her expression was full of disdain. Right now, the Chinese business circle in America is really uneven. Any ignorant person can come up to manage a company. This kind of person who dirties someone's clothes and is still so proud can be invited here. Our CEO is really too good-tempered. Otherwise, a company like the Phone Corporation wouldn't even have the chance to come to Washington this time. You really think too highly of yourself. I asked you to apologize and accompany him to change clothes, but you're afraid of this and that. What can a person like you do? Feng Ling endured it. However, although she knew that this was a trap, it still seemed like she was in the wrong. Her expression did not change, but her eyes were cold. Now any Tom, Dick, or Harry can be a secretary. It was indeed my fault for bumping into CEO. At the same time, I've already made the compensation and apology. The most important thing now is that as a secretary, you should immediately send CEO back to change clothes. Don't you think this view is very strange? This time, Feng Ling deliberately raised her voice, so that the people around her could hear the development of the situation. CEO saw her goal and narrowed his eyes. Miss Feng's temper is very stubborn. Are you sure you can survive in this circle with your personality? Whether I can survive or not depends on where I want to stand. Whether I can survive or not depends on where I want to stand. Although this billion yuan is in your hands, and I do need your company's financing, it doesn't mean that the Phone Corporation won't be able to survive without this financing. Right now, we're just giving each other a chance to cooperate. It's just a choice between getting the opportunity and losing the opportunity. Neither of them is a dead end, so why are you so decisive? Feng Ling said lightly. So CEO, someone with broad horizons like you will block the path of a small company like the Phone Corporation just because of a piece of clothing? You. CEO did not speak, but the secretary did not expect her to retort. She even used such a method to hint at something. She immediately turned to look at CEO. Our CEO has broad horizons. He won't argue with a small character like you, but you're too insensible, the secretary said again and rolled her eyes at Feng Ling. All right, stop talking. CEO ended the conversation in time, but his expression was not very good. Since Miss Feng doesn't like our financing, there's no need for us to communicate. I think Miss Feng has no intention of talking to us about this today. I can only wish Miss Feng good food and drink here. Does your company always cooperate with people by asking them to enter the room to change clothes? Feng Ling's tone turned cold. CEO, I don't know if you set this rule, or if it was set by your boss. So what if I set it? CEO was obviously unhappy when he saw that she was deliberately raising her voice to let others hear their conversation. Previously, He had noticed that Feng Ling's personality was very quiet and cold. She didn't like to cause trouble, and whenever she encountered something, she would deal with it coldly. It was precisely because he had taken a fancy to this that he wanted to take advantage of this opportunity. However, he didn't expect that she wasn't someone who could completely endure it. As CEO spoke, he suddenly reached out to grab her wrist. I don't think you're in the mood to continue discussing cooperation with others here. Why don't you come with me to find a place to have a good, detailed, and fresh chat? He enunciated the last few words very slowly, and his voice was also very low. However, Feng Ling waved his hand away and turned to leave with a cold expression. However, at this moment 2 security guards suddenly stood by the side and blocked her way. When she saw the 2 security guards, Feng Ling's expression did not change. She looked at them coldly until CEO walked over and stood less than half a meter behind her. He said in a low voice, Miss Feng, you're a smart person. You should have guessed something before you came. Do you think the security facilities in my villa are poor? When you entered the door, the surveillance camera at the door detected that you were equipped with a dagger and several sharp blades. I know that you are different from ordinary girls. But do you think that you have the ability to hurt people now that you are standing here? You have to know that you're no longer the daughter of the Feng family. You have the entire Feng Corporation and the Feng family behind you. If you dare to kill anyone here, we can destroy your entire Feng family. Not far away, Li Nanheng was chatting with a few businessmen and celebrities. His attitude was aloof and noble, but not arrogant. Although his expression was cold, the celebrities did not feel like they were being slighted. Suddenly, the sound of a wine glass shattering entered his ears. Chapter 13:19. Do you think you're so capable? Do you think you can do whatever you want just because you have some skills? It won't be so easy to get by here. Hearing this voice, Li Nanheng frowned slightly. He casually glanced at the crowd 20 meters away, only to see Feng Ling's figure. The man's pupils constricted slightly. When he saw that she was trapped by 2 security guards, his expression changed. Seeing this, a few businessmen and celebrities followed his gaze and looked over. Then, someone quickly went over to smooth things over and said, Boss E, what happened? Why did you start making things difficult for a woman? You're Miss Feng, right? Are you alright? The last sentence was said by the person who tried to smooth things over to Feng Ling. As he spoke, he glanced at Li Nanheng from the corner of his eyes. If he was not mistaken, CEO Li should know this person in charge of the Feng Corporation, and their relationship was not simple. Feng Ling did not answer. She was just thinking about the door she had just passed. No wonder it looked like a door made of high-tech metal. It turned out that it had an automatic scanning function that could scan all the illegal and dangerous items on her body. No wonder CEO E did not use any other methods. He knew that she would not be easy to deal with. So he simply wanted to take the opportunity to see if he could take any measures that would make her give in. In the end, he failed. Miss Feng doesn't look too good. Should I ask someone to send you over to sit down and rest? The person who tried to smooth things over said, and gave his assistant a look. Wait. Li Nanheng's voice was low. He turned and walked in that direction. At the same time, he said to the celebrities beside him, Excuse me. Yu Zheng, who was following Li Nanheng, quickly stopped smiling politely at the celebrities beside him. He turned to look at CEO Li, and his eyes were filled with surprise. What was CEO Li doing? Yu Zheng followed closely behind. There were 2 sides in her heart. One side was reminding her that if she wanted to break out of the encirclement, not to mention these 2 security guards, even the dozen or so security guards present might not be her match. She could just fight her way out. However, the other side was telling her that she couldn't. She had the Feng family behind her, and even if she couldn't get the 1 billion yuan, it was still necessary for her to gain a foothold in Washington. She couldn't be impulsive or use force to solve it. Just when her hand, which had just dropped the wine glass, was tightly clenching into a fist in her sleeves, restraining herself all the time, a lazy and smiling voice suddenly sounded in his ears. Bossy, how did my woman provoke you? This voice, the familiar voice, caused Feng Ling's cold heart to skip a beat. It was as though someone had hit her with a stick. Really, whatever you were afraid of came true. She secretly restrained her emotions and turned to see Li Nanheng approaching. CEO Yi's expression stiffened when he heard Li Nanheng's sudden words. He turned to see who it was. After seeing that it was really Li Nanheng, he then looked at Feng Ling, whose expression had become much calmer. Who is it? This Miss Feng? CEO Li's woman? CEO Yi. Feng Ling did not look at Li Nanheng. She only said lightly, I'm your guest, and Mr. Li is also your guest. You must have heard wrongly. CEO Yi didn't understand. If he had heard wrongly, then the others couldn't have heard wrongly. However, it was clear that those who had heard this had heard Li Nanheng's words clearly. For a moment he was unsure. He could only look at Feng Ling, who did not even like to wear a gown, and rushed to the banquet in casual sportswear. Then he turned to look at Li Nanheng. Li Nanheng did not explain further. He moved his gaze away from Feng Ling's face and turned to look at the others. What happened? The secretary beside CEO Yi thought for a moment and quickly went forward to add oil to the fire. Feng Ling clearly did not do it on purpose, and the wine should not have been spilled on CEO Yi. But such a small matter had been exaggerated by the secretary. She said a lot about how cold and arrogant Feng Ling was. In short, all the fault was on her, and she described her attitude as very bad. After listening, Li Nanheng only glanced at Feng Ling indifferently. The latter did not even look at him, but her expression was cold and indifferent. If it weren't for the fact that they were in front of everyone in the business world, and that Feng Ling was indeed responsible for the Feng family, she really wanted to throw this secretary over her shoulder. She didn't even sneer, but her expression was very cold, so cold that it was as if there was a certain distance between her and these people. Even if she was being framed and embellished, she just looked on coldly and didn't rush to explain. Seeing her attitude, the two security guards reached out unhappily and grabbed her wrist. Let go. Li Nanheng stood in the crowd. His face was obviously cold and angry, and his eyes were clearly dark. At the same time, he looked at Feng Ling speak. I have nothing to say. Feng Ling was suddenly pointed out by the man and looked at him. It's a small matter. There's no need for Mr. Li to worry. I can solve it myself. You can solve it. Li Nanheng's low voice carried a hint of coldness that others could not understand. Earlier, he had said that she was his woman, but now it seemed like the atmosphere between the two of them was very far apart. Feng Ling glanced at him again. She recalled that it was rare for Li Nanheng to see her in such a sorry state. She had clearly said that she wanted to bet with him, but now she was the one being bullied for the sake of this 1 billion yuan. On the contrary, he did not put in any effort at all. If she made such a bet with him, it would probably be equivalent to a moth flying into a flame. Her brain was flooded with water to bet on this. Thinking of this, her face turned even colder. She did not want to say anything else and only said coldly to CEO Yi, I'm sorry. Then she turned around and walked out without looking back. She did not intend to give anyone any face. Feng Ling did not have the capital to be so willful in the business circle. But with Li Nanheng standing here, she suddenly only wanted to be willful once. She did not want to face him in such an embarrassing situation. Stop. The man's voice was clear and deep, but Feng Ling had already seen through his emotions. She knew that he was not angry, but was just warning her not to leave willfully at this time. She originally wanted to leave, but when she thought of the Feng family and the towering tree of the Feng family, she immediately stopped in her tracks and felt a chill run down her back. Chapter 1320. Feng Ling really wanted to scold herself for being disappointing. She usually thought that she was very powerful, but when she really fell into the mouth of this business circle, she found that she really might not be able to handle it. In the past 10 months, she had been fighting with the people in the company and had not reached out her hands to the outside world. Now that she had reached out, she realized how bad the people in this circle were. She was quiet for a moment and abruptly turned back. I've just been taught a lesson by CEO Yi. Do you have anything else to say, CEO Li? Just now, Li Nanheng had publicly said that she was his woman, but now Feng Ling had a vigilant expression on her face that said, I'm not familiar with you. Her whole body was in a state of cold vigilance, as though she might walk out at any time without looking back. At a time like this, she could still be stubborn. Li Nanheng was so angry that he laughed. He slowly unbuttoned the exquisite buttons on his collar. His aura was different from before. He really had the aura of a superior in the business circle. His black eyes were cold as he stared at her, and his voice was low and indifferent. "Come here." Feng Ling's scalp went numb from his gaze. It was as though he was looking down at her when she was thrown onto the training ground at night to do devil training. She kept telling herself not to get involved with him on such an occasion. "Sorry. Today's occasion is not suitable for a newcomer in the business circle like me. Everyone eat and have fun." "I'd better. I told you to come over." Li Nanheng mercilessly interrupted her. The self-mocking words of a newcomer in the business circle made him frown and his gaze dark. Feng Ling clenched her hands in her sleeves. Although Yu Zheng was not particularly familiar with this Miss Feng, he could tell that CEO Li was on the verge of anger. It was clear that CEO Li wanted to help her, but why did this Miss Feng keep avoiding him? Everyone present could see that the two of them were advancing and retreating. They couldn't help but wonder what kind of relationship this Miss Feng had with Li Nanheng. Feng Ling glanced at him again and met Li Nanheng's gaze. She pondered for a moment and turned to walk back. "It's just a small matter. Mr. Li really doesn't need to interfere." She looked up at his eyes and said, "There's no need to make our relationship so ambiguous on this occasion. I don't want to do this." As soon as she finished speaking, Li Nanheng's black eyes narrowed coldly, and his pupils constricted. His tightly pursed thin lips curved into a mocking smile, but his expression was extremely cold. The celebrities beside the man couldn't help but shiver. The assistant Yu Zheng felt that this lady was courting death. Li Nanheng ignored the crowd behind him and walked to the front of the cover. Looking at her, he bent down slightly and whispered in her ear, "No matter how stubborn you are, it depends on the time. Are you sure you still want to confront me at this time?" When he spoke, there was a cold sneer in his voice. When he spat out each word, there seemed to be some ice shards in his voice. "Otherwise, do I have to admit that I'm related to you in front of so many people?" Feng Ling said and stepped back. "Think about it carefully. If this billion goes down the drain because of your temper, it won't be long before you have to prepare to marry me. I gave you face and gave you some leeway, but now you don't want to give yourself any leeway at all." The man's voice was still cold and indifferent, but there was a hint of mockery. "Where did the courage you had to make the bet with me go? It's so easy to marry you. I'm afraid I'm not used to it." As she listened, her heart pounded wildly. The bet was all because she had enough confidence. But now, this confidence had almost been wiped away. After all, King appeared out of nowhere. She didn't speak. She just hated the unequal status between them. It was like this in the past, and it was like this now. But thinking about it carefully, every time in the past, he seemed to be the first to give in. Thinking of this, her eyes gradually melted a little, but there was still some stubbornness in her eyes. The biggest resentment in her heart was that she should have listened to Qin Shuk's suggestion and given up on the financing from CEO E and looked elsewhere. She shouldn't have taken this risk. In the end, she even embarrassed herself in front of Li Nanheng. Feng Ling didn't realize that the reason she was really depressed and angry was because she had made a fool of herself in front of Li Nanheng. Her heart was surging with displeasure. Seeing that she was still deliberately drawing a line between them, Li Nanheng's jaw tightened. The next second, he suddenly reached out and held her in his arms. Feeling his movements, Feng Ling retreated in shock, but was quickly pulled back by the man. The moment she fell into his arms, the man's voice was close to her ear. It was as though he was whispering, but it was as though everyone around could hear his voice. "Why are you still throwing a tantrum with me at a time like this? I just made you angry last night. Is there a need to not give your fiancé face in front of so many people?" "Fiancé?" Everyone was in an uproar. Feng Ling. She was about to push him away, but the man had already let go of her. At the same time, he lowered his eyes to look at her fiery gaze. There was a smile in his eyes, but that smile was clearly warning her not to speak nonsense. If he didn't let her speak, he could speak nonsense? Whose fiancé? She had only run into a wall with CEO E and had other countermeasures. It wasn't even a month yet. How could he be so shameless as to call himself her fiancé? Did she agree to it? However, in a sense, Feng Ling was also labeled as someone not to be trifled with. Li Nanheng's name was of utmost importance in the American-Chinese business world. Although he had just taken over the Li Corporation, he rarely attended these banquets. Other than the family leaders who often worked with the Li Corporation, most people had never interacted with this former young master of the Li family. However, the rumors were all about how unapproachable this man was, how abstinent he was, and how pure he was. Thus, the socialites who saw him today were all very interested in him. However, today, this man had personally broken the fantasies of those socialites. Was he already engaged? Ahaha. I've read a lot of comments saying that I don't understand Feng Ling's attitude recently. In fact, everyone has different feelings. Some people think that Li is wrong, while others think that Feng is going too far. In fact, as long as no one violates their principles, nothing is a big problem. It all depends on how I write it, haha. There will be a big plot before the ending of Ling Li's side story. Currently, Ling Li's side story is almost 4/5 complete. After the ending, Qin Shi's side story will continue. As for every story and every character, regardless of whether they are good or bad, Qing wants to thank everyone for their company. Chapter 1321. Li Nanheng never brought a female companion to attend. It was rare for him to appear at such an event, but he actually pestered the second miss of the Feng family, who had a strange background. He even said that he was Miss Feng's fiancé. Most importantly, this second miss of the Feng family was avoiding Li Nanheng. Even though there were no major media outlets invited to this banquet, there were still some small media outlets mixed in. They had already set up their own small cameras, especially when they saw that second Miss Feng seemed to be planning to slip away in front of Li Nanheng. The relationship between the two of them was even more curious. Logically speaking, the two of them shouldn't have any interaction. But why did it seem like they had known each other for a long time? And Li Nanheng's actions were completely unrelated to the description of him not being interested in women. Feng Ling didn't expect that Li Nanheng could use his identity as a fiancé to suppress her in public. She seemed to be frozen in place, and her expression was a little stiff. For a moment, she didn't know what to say. She couldn't deny it loudly. Li Nanheng was helping her. It wouldn't be good for both of them if it hurt his face. But could she just admit it? Looking at the people surrounding the two of them, she pursed her lips and didn't speak. The man let go of her and pushed her away by an arm's length. However, his hand was still on her arm as he looked down at her. At some point, the cufflinks on the man's wrists had been undone, and his sleeves had been rolled up a little, revealing a muscular and good-looking wrist. Such an action of hugging and letting go dispelled the unapproachable and cold image of him in everyone's hearts. However, coupled with his ugly and somewhat cold expression, it still made the people around him fearful, and they didn't dare to say a word. Feng Ling looked at him, but her mind was blank. All of a sudden, CEO E stood by her side and leaned closer to say, "Miss Feng is actually So Li's fiancé. This is really big news. I really didn't expect it." It was clear that CEO E was trying his best to smooth things over. He didn't take the Feng Corporation seriously, but he didn't dare to disregard the Li family. If the two of them were together, there would be no place for financial companies in the Chinese business world in the United States. In CEO E's eyes, Feng Ling's silence really matched what Li Nanheng had said earlier. She was so angry that she didn't want to pay attention to him, but she didn't want to hurt her fiancé's face in public. Thus she was conflicted and sullen. She put on a cold face and didn't say anything. It was as if they were indeed very close to each other, but they were quarreling with each other in a cold war. Get lost. Li Nanheng's gaze swept across CEO E's face like a sharp knife. GM Li. CEO E's secretary said with difficulty, "Miss Feng and you are both our distinguished guests today. Earlier, it was just a small misunderstanding. It's all my fault. Earlier, our CEO didn't want to argue about the dirty clothes, but I was anxious, so I said a few harsh words. Please don't argue with a small character like me. A small misunderstanding? Li Nanheng sneered. Standing here and speaking with such certainty, you are the one who is right and wrong. Who gave you the right? This Miss Feng's attitude was indeed too cold and arrogant earlier. I was anxious, so I said some harsh words. I didn't mean to do anything. CEO Yi's secretary braced himself and said, CEO Li, please don't make things difficult for me. At this moment, Feng Ling had regained her composure. She glanced at the secretary indifferently. Seeing Feng Ling suddenly look at him, CEO Yi's secretary subconsciously took a small step back, afraid that Feng Ling would say something and make Li Nanheng, who didn't seem to intend to let things go, really do something here. It's a small matter. Forget it. I'll pay for CEO Yi's clothes, but I can't fulfill CEO Yi's other requests. As for the financing, let's wait until the financial conference to discuss it. The banquet should be a joyous occasion. Don't let my small matter dampen the mood, Feng Ling said. Since Miss Feng has said so, I think we should enjoy ourselves. It's just a small interlude, haha. The secretary continued to smooth things over, and also slightly breathed a sigh of relief. Li Nanheng still ignored her. His cold gaze landed on Feng Ling. What did COE just ask of you? Feng Ling abruptly raised her eyes to look at him, hinting for him not to blow up this matter. She wanted to calm things down. The Feng Corporation couldn't stand too much of a storm right now. The Li Corporation was indeed not afraid of anything. But the Feng Corporation she had helped up was on the verge of collapse. She had to endure it when it was time. CEO Yi stood by the side and stared at Feng Ling, as though afraid that if she moved her lips, she would really say what he had done to her earlier. At this moment, there was another commotion by the side. It seemed that the big shots of the financial world had come over. The people around immediately turned back and rushed in that direction. The surrounding air seemed to have become much smoother, allowing Feng Ling's somewhat muddled head to clear up. CEO Li. His assistant Yu Zheng remembered that Li Nanheng had come today to discuss something with the big shot of the financial world. Seeing that he had approached, he stood behind Li Nanheng and reminded him in a low voice. Are we going over now or? Li Nanheng didn't seem to hear his assistant's words. He suddenly sneered and looked at Feng Ling. Feng Ling, have you made up your mind to continue being so awkward with me? Li Nanheng was indeed Li Nanheng. He was so arrogant that he didn't care about anyone's eyes or the occasion. Feng Ling clenched her fists and approached him with some difficulty. She said in a voice that only he could hear. What's the matter? Can't we talk after we leave this place? After a while, she heard the man's chuckle. You want to avoid suspicion? Very good. He said these two words indifferently. His icy gaze finally moved away from her body. Feng Ling turned her gaze to his face. Although the man did not leave immediately, he had already turned to walk toward the crowd. Mr. Li, nice to meet you. The big shot of the financial world stepped forward and shook Li Nanheng's hand warmly. He was clearly very old, but because of his good maintenance, he still looked bright and energetic. His eyes were filled with admiration and enthusiasm for Li Nanheng. Nice to meet you, Mr. Mike. Li Nanheng curled his lips slightly. Although the coldness in his eyes had been retracted, there was still some hostility left. This hostility made his gaze sweep over the people around him, and there was a hint of mockery in his eyes. W. 4M. Chapter 1322. Li Nanheng and Mr. Mike went to the front to discuss matters. Feng Ling remained standing in place. When she turned back, she happened to meet Li Nanheng's gaze. Before he left, he glanced at her again, and his dark and cold eyes swept past her body. Feng Ling felt that tonight's matter was a big mistake. Firstly, she didn't expect CEO Yi to use such an unsightly method to test if she had any intentions of making a deal. Secondly, CEO Yi didn't expect Li Nanheng to care about these things, and there was such an unclear relationship between her and Li Nanheng. In fact, even she didn't expect things to develop like this. She listened to the man's footsteps as he left, turned back to pick up a glass of wine, and took a sip. With the help of the slightly cold red wine, she forcefully suppressed the burning sensation in her throat that was about to emit smoke. Miss Feng, are you okay? Because they knew that Feng Ling and Li Nanheng's relationship was not ordinary. The people nearby noticed her. Even if they weren't familiar with her, they still quickly asked with concern. Feng Ling held the wine glass in her hand and turned back to smile lightly. I'm fine. You and CEO Li? The man was curious and hesitant, wanting to ask something. Mr. Li is joking. Feng Ling didn't want to explain further. She smiled apologetically at the man and turned to leave with the wine glass. Li Nanheng was actually very calm and rational in many things. But once she was violated or treated too rudely, whether it was in the base or here, all his calmness and rationality would disappear. And even the word magnanimous would no longer exist. He might really be able to vent his anger on all the business people present tonight. In fact, Feng Ling didn't know that she would meet him here tonight. In that situation, she didn't cooperate with him again and again. What would happen to her? Although Mr. Mike was old, he was a rather important person at tonight's banquet. What they needed to talk about were the profit-making relationships between the various companies and various general situations. The conversation lasted for about half an hour. Half an hour later, Li Nanheng scanned the audience but didn't find Feng Ling. He frowned slightly. Excuse me. The man left these words and turned to leave in large strides. Feng Ling couldn't leave just like that. After all, what happened just now wasn't over. If she left without saying a word, the greatest impact would be on the Feng Corporation's reputation in the industry. She took advantage of the fact that she didn't have anything to do and didn't need to face too many interpersonal disputes. She went to the backyard of the villa and found that there was a huge pool behind it. The pool was surrounded by a unique European-style garden. When she walked out, the waiter in the banquet hall thoughtfully handed her a coat and said that it was dark and windy outside. If she wanted to go out for some air, she should wear more clothes. After thanking him, Feng Ling put on her coat and stood by the pool, looking at the huge blue pool in front of her. The guests were still chatting and laughing in the banquet hall at the back. The back was empty. Occasionally, one or two people would pass by, but they were only the gardeners or servants of the villa. On this mountain villa, there was only such a beautiful garden installed with many lights. The night view and lighting in the garden were also perfectly designed. It would not make people feel uncomfortable because they were on the mountain. Instead, the environment was good, the air was good, and all aspects were very pleasant. The premise was that CEO didn't have those messy hobbies of seducing all kinds of women. He was really a person with good taste. Feng Ling stood silently by the pool. The wind blew past, causing a shallow layer of ripples on the pool. She stared at the shallow ripples on the waves and remembered the warning in Li Nanheng's eyes just now because she didn't cooperate. Since she had already entered the business world, she had to learn to be independent. In the past, she didn't like to rely on others for anything. Did she have to rely on Li Nanheng now? As long as he was here, many of the thorny problems she needed to face would no longer become thorny. In fact, many of the things she wanted to obtain could be obtained with a casual word from him. Such a gap was more because she was unwilling. She didn't want to, and she was unwilling to accept it. At the very least, she couldn't defeat him when they sparred in the base. Now, she still couldn't defeat him. Sometimes, Feng Ling really wondered if Li Nanheng had added infinite light and color to her life, or if he had added layers of heavy shadows. If she really couldn't get this 1 billion yuan, even if she was unwilling, she would probably be eaten by Li Nanheng in the future. Feng Ling stood for a while and prepared to return to the banquet hall. However, as soon as she turned around, a tall and slender figure suddenly bumped into her eyes. The man was leaning against the grape trellis in the garden between the villa and the pool. She didn't know how long he had been standing there. The beautiful lights in the garden behind the villa fell on his face, but his face was shrouded in the shadow under the grape trellis. She couldn't see his expression clearly, only the flickering spark of the cigarette, but between his fingers flickered. If it was the Feng Ling who was still in 11 base in the past, as long as she didn't like him, she would really turn around and leave. She didn't even want to talk to him or say a word. But that time, Li Nanheng said that he loved her for 10 years. From the time she was almost stripped naked by him in the sauna room in the orphanage, to the time she used small stones to provoke him in the jungle outside the orphanage, to the time she entered the base, to the time she was 13 years old, and to the years that followed, his shadow had always occupied a place in her life. Even she didn't expect that she would be entangled with this man for so long. 10 years. Life was impermanent. How many 10 years could one have in one's life? She knew her temper too well. She was stubborn, careful, couldn't tolerate sand in her eyes, didn't like to turn back, and was often stubborn and cold. However, Li Nanhing insisted on loving her for so many years. There had never been a messy woman by his side. Even if there was, he never gave her a chance. He didn't even give her a chance to be jealous. Although she was angry, she didn't want to force the road between the two of them to be too difficult. So she made such a bet. Either marry him and be entangled with him for the rest of her life, or they would separate and never see each other again. Perhaps it was because they had been entangled with each other for too long that she did not have the patience and energy to cultivate her relationship with another person. Even if she really had the patience to cultivate it, who would be able to enter her eyes? Xiaoba said that she and Jinwan were the same. They learned to love for the first time and met the best person. W4M. Chapter 1323. Li Nanheng suddenly appeared behind the villa. Feng Ling stood there without moving. "Come here," the man said mildly. His voice was indiscernible. Feng Ling continued to stand there without moving. Her feet seemed to be nailed to the ground. "Are you stupid? You're standing by the pool to enjoy the wind?" His voice was heavy. "I'll say it again. Come here." Hearing the displeasure in his tone, Feng Ling walked over and stood about a meter away from him. They weren't too close, but it was enough for the man's face to be seen clearly in the light of the garden. His long eyelashes were lowered, and his deep black eyes were quietly sizing her up. He didn't seem to be angry. "Weren't you talking to Mr. Mike? Why did you come out?" Feng Ling asked. "The banquet inside shouldn't be over yet. It's not good for such a heavyweight like Mr. Li to suddenly disappear." In other words, she and the Feng Corporation were nothing in the eyes of these people. Not everyone could notice whether she was missing or not. Li Nanheng reached out to touch her face, only to feel a coldness. He furrowed his brows and used his warm palms to rub her face. He only stopped when her cheeks heated up. Feng Ling's cheeks hurt from his rubbing, but she endured it and did not say anything. This man always had some hidden stubbornness in his bones. This was not like her home, nor was it a place that belonged to the two of them. If they quarreled again, it would not be good to be seen by others. "Weren't you very strong-willed when you faced these people alone?" Li Nanheng's eyes darkened, and his tone was full of mockery. "Why did you suddenly become silent the moment I went over? Did it affect your emotions so much when you saw me?" "It doesn't affect me, but I'm not used to seeing you in such a situation." Feng Ling's expression did not change. "At least in the business world, I'm still a beginner. When there are acquaintances, it's inevitable that I will show my timidity." "Oh, you mean you're embarrassed?" The man lifted her chin and stared at her with his black eyes. "No, I was thinking about how to get my hands on that 1 billion yuan. In the end, you attracted so much attention the moment you appeared. I suddenly felt that there was no need to fight for the same resource as you. I was just thinking about changing my target. Today CEO E was just testing me. He didn't go overboard. At least he's more restrained than I imagined. I have my own defenses. There's no need for you to worry." Feng Ling turned her head away to avoid his hand. Hearing her words, Li Nanheng's eyes darkened. He continued to hold her chin. "Even if you knew that grandson had ill intentions towards you, you still dared to come? What can he do to me? If he really does things to a certain extent, he will be the one to die." Feng Ling knew that she was being unreasonable, but she still refused to admit it. Li Nanheng sneered. "Do you think this is a place where you can kill people? Do you want the Feng Corporation's reputation? Whether or not I can support the Feng Corporation depends on my own strength. With this luck, I can hold on. Without that luck, I can't do anything." Feng Ling lowered her head. However, just as he finished speaking, he felt a sharp pain in his chin. She couldn't help but frown. Li Nanheng coldly pursed his lips. Looking at her expression of enduring humiliation, the anger in his heart rose even more. He reached out and pulled the woman who could make him angry into his arms. He raised her face and kissed her heavily. Feng Ling's brows twitched from his sudden kiss, and the temperature on his lips. She shivered and wanted to retreat, but the man took the opportunity to drive in and steal her breath. After kissing her fiercely for a while, he picked her up and pressed her against the wall. His hot chest imprisoned her, and the hot kiss blocked her again. Feng Ling almost lost her ability to think from his kiss. She had drunk some wine in the room. Although it was not much, she was blown by the wind for a while. The good red wine still had some alcohol in it. Her body, which was slightly cold from the wind, gradually warmed up. The heat rushed directly to her brain, and then to her eyes. After a long while, Li Nanheng finally let go of her, but he was still not satisfied. He lowered his head and kissed her red and swollen lips heavily. As if it was not enough, he kissed her a second time and a third time. Feng Ling's every breath was blocked by him, making her almost unable to stand steadily. The drunkenness in her mind seemed to have become stronger. Her head was so dizzy that she knew she should push him away, but because she heard someone approaching, she did not dare to move too much, lest she attracted the attention of others. She raised her hand and tugged hard at the man's belt, trying to strangle him and remind him to let go. However, when her hand moved around his belt, her fingers rubbed against his waist. The man took a heavy breath and pressed against her forehead. His fingertips scraped the corner of her eyes, and his hoarse voice was filled with dissatisfaction. With me here, what luck do you need? You've been isolated in the Feng family, and you've gone to England to study. You've tortured me for 2 years. It's enough. Feng Ling glared at the man in front of her, who wanted to get back together with her, and was so angry that she was almost speechless. She wanted to say that she didn't want to torture him. She didn't have so much time to be delicate. Life had shown her the way, and she was just following that direction. He was clearly the one who was domineering and shameless. However, Li Nanheng had clearly accepted her reason for clearly feeling wronged because she left the base, but she insisted that she didn't want to give up halfway. He pressed his fingertips against her slightly red and swollen lips, and explained in a low and hoarse voice. First of all, I didn't come here today to compete with you for the 1 billion yuan. But even if I didn't compete with you and helped you pave the way, you would still lose to me in the end. I just didn't want you to lose too badly, and helped you on every occasion. But you didn't accept it, and insisted on being stubborn with me. Secondly, you were destined to marry me anyway. Back then, your cenotaph was already my wife in name. The word fiancé doesn't seem strange to me at all. You have to get used to it, and accept it as soon as possible. Feng Ling looked at him in disbelief. He shamelessly used the word fiancé to seal his own coffin. Li Nanheng, you really don't have any shame at all. It's enough as long as I want you. Why do I need shame? The man sneered and pinched her face with his fingers. His fingertips wrapped around her soft long hair. W. 4M. Chapter 1324. Feng Ling saw that someone was approaching, and quickly signaled for him to let go of her with her eyes. However, Li Nanheng refused to let go of her. CEO Yi gave his company's big leader something behind his back. Although he has the right to talk about financing this time, he doesn't have enough power. If you want to please him, why don't you please me? After all, their company's big leader grew up with me. Doesn't that mean I have no chance of winning here? Feng Ling muttered to herself. Li Nanheng raised his brows slightly and smiled meaningfully. Do you think I'll snatch it from you? No, Feng Ling subconsciously retorted. Even if you don't snatch it, someone else will. In this situation, my chances of winning are not high. Whether your chances of winning are high or not depends on whether you understand or not. Li Nanheng's scorching palm pressed against her waist. His eyes were deeper than the night behind her. Instead of being obedient to someone like CEO Yi, why don't you treat your old acquaintance better? Perhaps I can help you. Feng Ling's brows twitched. Li Nanheng, have you forgotten our agreement? Help me. Instead of making you panic after I win, why don't I let you win a small round first? At least your heart is still mine. Li Nanheng raised his brows and chuckled. You stood by the pool for a long time. Were you thinking about how to win in front of me? Actually, there's really no need to go through too much trouble. As long as you smile at me and kiss me, not to mention 1 billion, even 2 billion or 3 billion yuan will be transferred to your phone corporation's funding channel in minutes, the man said as he played with her long hair. And what I want is just you. Feng Ling turned her face away. The man raised his hand and turned her face around. Don't turn your head. I'm serious. Could it be that he also knew that he wasn't being serious just now? What? What do you plan to do about Tieming? That's a branch of the phone corporation. Do you want to take it back? Yes. CEO Yi and Feng Mingyi have worked together for many years. The two of them must have known about this matter. I guess so. How do you want a Tieming back? The legal person behind Tieming is still on the phone corporation's side. If I want to take him in, he won't be able to stand. Let's see if I want to target him now. Feng Ling glanced at the people passing by. Li Nanheng pinched her face and said in a low voice as he released her. You don't like to be intimate with me in front of outsiders? I'll give you some face and go in first. It's very windy outside. In the banquet hall, Mr. Mike had just dealt with a wave of business friends who had come up to greet him. He then politely chatted with CEO Yi for a while, and had already gone to the special VIP lounge to rest. CEO Yi still stayed behind to continue entertaining the guests. Without Mr. Mike around, the atmosphere in the banquet hall became much livelier. After all, when Senior Jiao was around, Mr. Mike was the former mentor of many business celebrities. Earlier, everyone had been a little restrained, but now they were more open. They danced, drank, and talked about things. The socialites who had taken the opportunity to surround Li Nanheng stood by the side and whispered to each other from time to time. They found it unbelievable that Li Nanheng was actually engaged. However, thinking about it, there was nothing wrong with it. The Li family had always been cautious and never revealed their family affairs to the public. Li Nanheng had just taken over the family business. With his current age, it wasn't strange for him to be engaged. Perhaps he had been engaged before he took over the Li Corporation. But why did they vaguely remember that a few years ago, they seemed to have heard about the marriage between the Li Corporation and the Phone Corporation? At that time, the media seemed to have spread it for a few days, but then the news disappeared into thin air? Back then, the second miss of the Feng family was still missing, right? She didn't return to the Feng family, did she? Could it be that there was something wrong with the news back then? Or was there some inside story between the two families? Li Nanheng was intercepted, halfway to discuss something, and Feng Ling did not follow him. Although Li Nanheng gave her a look to ask her to follow, she chose to pick up a glass of red wine and raise it to him from afar. She had no intention of being tied to him. Li Nanheng's face darkened, and he was about to come over. But at this moment, Feng Ling felt a small figure flash past her legs. From the corner of her eyes, she suddenly saw a very small boy crawling out from under the table by the side. He then struggled to get up from the ground and walked unsteadily to the table, reaching out to grab the cake on it. However, there were still many wine glasses and red wine on the table. The child reached out to grab the tablecloth. If he continued to grab it, the tablecloth would be pulled down, and the cake and wine glasses on it would fall all over the child. Feng Ling quickly put down the wine glass, stepped forward, and picked up the little boy. Li Nanheng's footsteps paused when he saw a child suddenly appear in her arms. For some reason, the scene of Feng Ling holding the child in front of him did not feel strange at all. The woman who had always been as cold to him as possible was holding the child with a very gentle gaze. What do you want to eat? Auntie will help you get it. Don't take it yourself. It's easy to hurt yourself. As Feng Ling spoke, she tapped the tip of the beautiful little boy's nose. At the same time, she looked around. She didn't know who brought this child here. Why didn't she see his parents? Just as she turned around, she suddenly saw a familiar figure flash past, but the figure left in a hurry. Feng Ling's expression faltered. When Liqing, she suddenly looked at the child in her arms with his round eyes. This child looked to be a little more than 2 years old. His neatly trimmed and cute mushroom hair was pressed softly against his forehead. At the same time, he was trying his best to stretch his neck in the direction of the cakes on the table beside him, mumbling, "Cakes? Don't want cakes." This child Feng Ling stared at his face in surprise. His eyes were very similar to Wen Liqing's. They were big and bright, but there was something between his brows that made him look like Dr. Wen. Li Nanheng had already approached. Looking at the child in her arms, he was not surprised. He only said, "I didn't expect you to like children, Feng Ling. I saw that he almost pulled the tablecloth off just now, so I picked him up." Li Nanheng did not say much. He glanced at the little thing in her arms, picked up a small triangular cake from the long table beside him, and handed it over. Looking at the little boy whose eyes lit up because the cake was delivered to his mouth, he raised his eyebrows and asked mildly, "Do you want to eat it?" Chapter 13:25. The little boy nodded with a smile. He looked extremely good-looking when he smiled. "Eat. Momo wants to eat. What's your name?" Li Nanheng did not immediately hand the cake to him, but raised his eyebrows and asked. Feng Ling frowned. "Li Nanheng, don't look so cold. This child looks very young. He might not understand what you're asking. He's 2 years old. He can understand," Li Nanheng said lightly. "He should be able to understand the simplest expression. How did he know this child was 2 years old?" Feng Ling did not speak. She held the child and looked at his face. "Can you understand what uncle is asking you?" The little boy looked at the cake, and then at Li Nanheng. He suddenly grinned, revealing a few white and cute little teeth. "Momo. Momo." Feng Ling had heard him talking about Momo earlier, and immediately touched his head. "What a cute and obedient child. Where are your parents?" Although she was somewhat suspicious of the figure outside who had suddenly left, she did not dare to believe it. Wen Liqing and Dr. Wen, they hadn't seen each other for a long time. It was impossible for a child to suddenly appear. What happened between the two of them 2 to 3 years ago? "Did your mother bring you here?" Li Nanheng asked again. The little boy had already answered his name. Seeing that he was still unwilling to give him the cake, he pursed his lips and turned to Feng Ling pleadingly. "Sister, Momo wants cake. Uncle won't give it." Li Nanheng's expression instantly darkened. "I'm an uncle? Is she my sister?" Feng Ling reached out and snatched the cake from his hand. "Why are you making things difficult for a child? He's already 30 years old. If he doesn't call you uncle, should he call you brother? If he really calls you brother, don't you feel embarrassed to answer?" Li Nanheng. Feng Ling gave the cake to the little boy and had just placed him on a small sofa by the side so that he could eat in peace. At this moment, the phone in her pocket vibrated. She took out her phone and took a look. It was a message from Wen Liqing, whom she had not seen or contacted for a long time. How did Wen Liqing know her new number? "He's called Wen Shimo. He's my son. He's 2 years old and 1 month old. He eats everything and is not picky. I really had no choice but to bring the child over when I knew you would be here tonight. However, it's not convenient for me to show myself. I'll explain it to you when I come back. Sorry to trouble you. Feng Ling, I have an urgent matter to attend to and need to leave America." Reading this message, Feng Ling turned to look at the little guy who had smeared the cream on the cake all over his face in the blink of an eye. Is he really Wen Liqing's child? Was he really 2 years old? She put down her phone and turned to look at Li Nanheng, who was also looking at the child. "Do you know about Wen Liqing?" "I don't know much, but the Wen family and the Li family have always been in frequent contact. I've heard about the Wen siblings in recent years," Li Nanheng said lightly. Li Nanheng said indifferently. After Wen Liqing became pregnant, she hid and gave birth to the child. But there seems to be something wrong with the Wen family. She has been avoiding Wen Linhan and taking care of the child alone. Today, she suddenly sent the child here and specially handed it to you. But she didn't show up. There must be something beyond her control. So this child is really Wen Liqing and Dr. Wen's? With this appearance, I can't think of a third person. Didn't you already have the answer just now? Li Nanheng's cold brows moved. But Wen Liqing probably really has no choice. Otherwise, why would she hand the child over to you? Feng Ling glanced at him strangely. What do you mean otherwise? Why would she hand the child over to me? Do you know how to take care of a child? Why not? If it really doesn't work, I'll send him to the Feng family. Since she rarely begged me, I can't really send this child to Dr. Wen, Feng Ling said and looked at the little guy who was covered in cream. Although she said it was easy, in fact, she had never taken care of a child before, nor had she interacted with a child much. Feng Ling really didn't know what to do. But the child had already been sent over. She couldn't push him out. It's not a good idea to send him back to the Feng family. When Linhan can easily find the whereabouts of this child. What the hell happened? Hasn't Wen Liqing always liked her brother? Now that she has a child, why is she so desperately avoiding him? She doesn't even allow him to see the child? Li Nanheng only raised his eyebrows and looked at her. I don't have a fixed residence in Washington, but I can temporarily settle the child in a joint venture hotel of the Li Corporation. Without my permission, no one can approach. You can come and take care of him at any time. I can also ensure that his whereabouts are hidden. Feng Ling had just turned to sit by the sofa and rubbed little Momo's head. Hearing Li Nanheng's words, she did not look up at him. But at the same time she said calmly, "Your idea is indeed not bad. 2 birds with 1 stone. Even I have to live at your place. Aren't I helping you think of a way?" Li Nanheng boasted shamelessly. Feng Ling couldn't be bothered with him. She asked a passing waiter for 2 wet tissues and helped little Momo wipe the cream on his body and mouth. This child did not cry even though he couldn't find his mother. He even called her sister sweetly. Wen Liqing had probably said something to this child before he came in. This child was quite obedient by her side. Since Wen Liqing didn't want Wen Linhan to find this child, unlike New York and Los Angeles, she didn't have any special rights. Li Nanheng's place was indeed the best place to go. You go out to work during the day. When you're busy, I can arrange for bodyguards and servants to take care of him. My people will keep their mouths shut. Li Nanheng's eyes darkened. There was no one else in his eyes, nor was there any child. There was only Feng Ling, who was sitting by the sofa with some hesitation in her eyes. It was time to draw in the net. If he didn't draw in the net, she would really be used to running away. He wouldn't be able to catch her. Promise you'll get a room for him alone, not in your own room, Feng Ling said slowly. This way, it'll be more convenient for me to accompany him. What will happen if he goes to my room? Li Nanheng raised his brows unhappily. I helped you take in this child, and you're still bargaining with me? Do you really think I can't do anything to you just because I've given in to you time and time again? Your lifestyle isn't healthy. It will affect the child. Feng Ling casually found a reason. Li Nanheng glanced at her coldly. How is my lifestyle unhealthy? If you smoke, it'll easily affect the child's respiratory tract. Feng Ling continued to find excuses. Ha! Li Nanheng sneered. Give birth to one for me right now. I promise I'll quit smoking immediately. Chapter 1326. Feng Ling was already used to this man's shameless behavior. She glared at him and continued to take out a wet tissue to wipe the cream off little Momo's face. Seeing Feng Ling's careful and patient appearance, Li Nanheng's gaze landed on her gentle side profile. Sister, eat. Little Momo held a small cherry in the cake with his little hand and brought it to her mouth. Feng Ling still remembered that this child had crawled over on the ground, and his hands were not clean at all. Right now, he was holding cream, and there was a red cherry in the middle of the cream. She lowered her eyes to glance at it, and then looked at the smile in the child's eyes. She smiled and lowered her head to put the cherry in his little hand into her mouth. All right, I've eaten it. Be good. Since your mother asked you to follow me, you have to be good and listen to me, okay? All right. Little Momo nodded with all his might. His confused expression and serious eyes were adorable no matter how one looked at it. Feng Ling rubbed his little head again and suddenly thought of something. She turned to see that Li Nanheng was talking to the celebrities nearby. She only glanced at his side profile before looking away. In order not to worry Wen Liqing, She should send the child to Li Nanheng. After all, Wen Lecheng had helped her a lot back then. Before Mr. Mike left CEO's banquet, he made an appointment with many celebrities present to go to his resort this weekend. Everyone accepted the invitation and agreed to go together on the weekend. Of course, Feng Ling and Li Nanheng were included. It was precisely because of Li Nanheng's presence that CEOE did not dare to take a step closer to Feng Ling. Whenever he appeared within 10 meters of Feng Ling, he would immediately receive a lukewarm glance from Li Nanheng's bodyguard. Yu Zheng was dumbfounded the entire time. CEO Li really didn't come to talk about cooperation today? He didn't have the mood to work at all? He was clearly here for Miss Feng. If he had known that CEO Li would come to date, why would he have worked overtime so late at night? If he had known this would happen, he would have gone home to sleep. Why did he have to stay here and watch the boss show off his affection? Enough! Although this public display of affection was one-sided, and Miss Feng barely responded, it was enough. After all, CEO Li was usually an extremely cold person in the company. She didn't expect that this male lion would be so docile in front of Miss Feng. Oh my god, oh my god. After leaving CEO's villa, Feng Ling drove by herself. Little Momo sat in the front passenger seat and was sleeping soundly. His white, tender, and chubby face was extremely cute, but because the child was too young, the height of the seat belt happened to be stuck at his neck. She was afraid that she would strangle him, so she drove very slowly. At the same time, the black SUV driving next to her car was also driving very slowly. Yu Zheng didn't know what CEO Li was going to do, but he only followed his request and walked with Miss Feng's sister. After going down the mountain, Li Nanheng said, "Go to the Besiding Hotel and show her the way." "All right." Yu Zheng nodded and quickly sped up to drive in front of Feng Ling's car. Feng Ling followed their car from time to time. From time to time, she would look at the little guy who was sleeping, afraid that he was uncomfortable. The distance from the foot of the mountain to the Besiding Hotel was about 20 kilometers. The traffic in Washington was very good at this time, and there was no traffic jam. They arrived in about 20 minutes. Feng Ling stopped the car and carried the little guy over. Momo was full and sleeping soundly. He rested his head on her shoulder and leaned against her arms. He was carried out and did not wake up after getting out of the car. When Yu Zheng got out of the car, he saw that Feng Ling had actually brought the child back. CEO Li seemed to know about it. He stood by the side and did not dare to ask. However, seeing that the child had fallen asleep, he took off his coat and handed it over. "Miss Feng, children are afraid of the wind when they sleep. Put my coat on him." Feng Ling took it and thanked him. Then she turned to look at Li Nanheng, who had already gotten out of the car. The man closed the car door and was about to take a cigarette out of habit. When he turned back to meet Feng Ling's gaze, his hand paused in his pocket. He then calmly glanced at Yu Zheng. "Go to the top floor and get a room. Arrange for some people to go over and let the child stay there. Then find someone to take care of him." "All right, CEO Li." Yu Zheng didn't understand, but he didn't dare to ask. He nodded and quickly went in to make the arrangements. "Go in." Li Nanheng's gaze fell on Feng Ling. Feng Ling did not speak. She carried little Momo and walked in. Seeing that she was reluctant to let go of the little boy, Li Nanheng's cold brows moved slightly. He reached out to take the child. "Let me carry him." However, the little guy woke up at some point. After hearing his words, not only did he not let go of her, but his two chubby arms were tightly wrapped around Feng Ling's neck. He leaned into her arms and said softly, "No, I want my sister to carry me." Li Nanheng looked at Feng Ling's smile despite being strangled by the little boy, and his face darkened. "Brat." Feng Ling carried Momo all the way to the room Li Nanheng had arranged. She didn't expect that although Li Nanheng looked like a domineering and cold man, he had carefully arranged a children's room. There were 2 beds, one big and one small, and a simple slide that children liked to play on. There were also some colorful wood and a small wooden horse in the corner. Feng Ling put Momo down, and the little thing excitedly paced around the room. He ran to play by himself, but because he was too young, his movements were a little clumsy. However, It was clear that Wen Leching had brought him to the amusement park to play. He knew how to play. After sliding a few times, he excitedly ran to the other side to hug the building blocks and refused to let go. Seeing that the child was happy, Feng Ling felt that she did not let down Wen Leching's rare request. Satisfied, Li Nanheng stood in front of the door with his arms crossed over his chest. He glanced indifferently at the little boy who was running around the room. Yu Zheng listened by the side and thought that CEO Li could really break all precedents for this Miss Feng. CEO Li clearly hated children and didn't even have the patience to coax any child. But he could actually bring this child to his place because of Miss Feng's words. Feng Ling turned back to look at him. And satisfied. If you don't show up when I'm here to accompany him, I'll be even more satisfied. Li Nanheng snorted. Burn the bridge after crossing the river. Dream on. Chapter 1327. She knew that he wouldn't do as she wished, so Feng Ling didn't waste any more time talking to him. She looked at little Momo and took a photo of the child playing happily. She lowered her head and fiddled with her phone before sending the photo to Wen Leching. After sending it for a few minutes, she didn't receive a reply. Guessing that Wen Leching probably didn't have time to look at her phone, Feng Ling put down her phone and continued to look at little Momo with a smile. It was already late at night when she returned from the banquet at the villa. It was almost 11 o'clock at night. After playing for a while, little Momo fell asleep on the wooden horse again. He didn't even take a shower. Feng Ling originally wanted to wake him up and help him take a shower before sleeping, but when she leaned over and saw the child's cute chubby face when he was sleeping, she saw that he looked very similar to Dr. Wen and Wen Leching. She gradually retracted her hand that had just reached out to pat him awake. Instead, she picked up the child and placed him on the soft bed. She covered him with the blanket and sat on the bed to watch the little guy sleeping soundly. For some reason, her heart felt warm and comfortable. The world of children was so good. After watching for a while, Feng Ling stood up. The moment she turned around, she almost bumped into the man's arms. She abruptly took a step back, and the back of her leg hit the edge of the bed. Thankfully, her years of training had allowed her to stand steadily, so she did not fall back onto the bed. She paused and shifted her gaze to his face. Why haven't you left yet? Did I say I was leaving? Then I'll go back first. I still have things to do at the company tomorrow. I still have to deal with TMing. I'll leave little Momo to you for now. With that, she turned to walk out. The man reached out and pulled her into his arms. It's too late. Sleep here and go back tomorrow morning. No, I have to go back to the company. Our company in Washington is temporary. After we get the financing, we have to return to New York. There are many things I need to look through, Feng Ling said indifferently. You know that when I took over the phone corporation, the entire company had already collapsed. It wasn't easy for me to reorganize so many scattered companies. I need to keep an eye on them. After all, there will be problems in every subsidiary or small department. How many days have you not slept well since you came to Washington? The man didn't seem to hear her, and only looked down at her face. Feng Ling paused. You know my temper. If I don't let you go, you won't be able to leave even if you want to. If you have the time to tangle with me, why don't you take a shower and go to bed early? If you have time tomorrow morning, you can drive back by yourself. If you don't have time, I'll send someone to drive you back. It won't delay anything for you. The man only wrapped his arm around her waist and did not do anything else that would make her angry. At the same time, he raised his cold brows slightly. Or, how about I help you take off your clothes and shower, watch you sleep, and accompany you to sleep? Feng Ling didn't speak at first, but then she put down her hand. This action showed that she really didn't want to waste time here, and chose to compromise. Li Nanheng finally let go of her, and pointed to the bathroom with his chin. Go take a shower. Feng Ling did not say much, and went straight into the bathroom. After a simple shower, he came out in a bathrobe, and saw the fruit platter, and some simple snacks on the coffee table opposite the sofa in the suite. She didn't eat much at the banquet, and only drank 2 glasses of red wine. Although she wasn't drunk, it was indeed uncomfortable to sleep on an empty stomach. Li Nanheng had already left, and there was only little Momo sleeping soundly on the bed in the room. Feng Ling glanced at the coffee table and went to get her phone. She then went to the sofa and sat down. She looked at her phone as she ate the fruit platter and snacks. Wen Lecheng's reply came 5 minutes ago. Wen Lecheng. Haha, thank you. He likes to play on the slide. He can play alone for an afternoon without feeling tired. If you're especially busy, you can let him play by himself. He won't disturb you. Feng Ling smiled and replied, It's okay. I'm not afraid of being disturbed. When I'm really busy, I'll leave it to someone else to take care of him. Anyway, don't worry. When Lecheng did not reply, Feng Ling put down her phone and continued to eat. There were 2 flavors of cake on the snack plate. One was the blueberry flavor that she always liked, and the other was the milk yellow flavor, which she suddenly fell in love with in the year she was in England. Li Nanheng actually knew about this. Feng Ling looked at the time as she ate the cake. It was getting late. She still had to return to the company tomorrow. After eating a few bites, she turned to brush her teeth and climbed into bed to hug little Momo to sleep. The child had a scent that adults did not have. It was very, very faint, but it made one feel inexplicably drowsy. It was as though the entire world had softened because of the child's breathing, and her heart had softened as well. The next morning, Feng Ling drove back to the company. As soon as she arrived at the company, she felt that something was wrong. There weren't many people who came to Washington with her, but almost everyone's faces were gloomy, as though something unpleasant had happened. When she walked into the office, she suddenly saw the LCD screen hanging above the office. In front of the Phone Corporation's headquarters in New York, there were live broadcast cars from various television stations surrounding the entire road. More and more people were watching the show. Feng Ling looked at the scene on the screen and heard the office door open again. Qin Shuk walked in. You're back? If you hadn't sent me a message last night to report that you were safe, I would have brought the police to look for you. You didn't come back last night, Qin Shuk said as she looked at the scene on the LCD screen. The current situation in New York can't be suppressed any longer. After we came to Washington, I don't know who started a rumor in the company that the Phone Corporation is being targeted by the American financial circle. They probably can't continue operating. They also said that the company is going to lay off a large number of people. In addition, the order has been withdrawn and the stock matter. Right now, all the employees in the company are in danger. Some people have been incited to say that they want to. Hearing the hesitation in Qin Shuk's words, Feng Ling's brows twitched. Want what? Continue. Needless to say, this news must have been caused by Feng Ming. Was he so afraid of being taken back by the Phone Corporation that he wanted to destroy the Phone Corporation first? It was indeed a good move to shake the morale of the employees. A few people with unstable mentalities were incited to jump off a building to threaten you, CEO Feng, to give up on the decision to lay off employees, Qin Shuk said as she sighed. Qin Shuk sighed as she spoke. This matter is really not right. Although the Phone Corporation hasn't been in a good state in the past few years, it has never been like this. Chapter 1328. Hearing this, Feng Ling did not say anything. She just looked at the situation on the screen and the live broadcast. A few minutes later, she said, Shuk, send a notice to the company in New York in my name. Tell all the employees to put down their current work and turn on the computer in the office before they get off work. I have something important to announce. After speaking, Feng Ling looked at the Phone Corporation's office building in New York on the screen. Her voice was calm and steady. Even Qin Shuk, who was a little upset, calmed down. All right. It wasn't her first day following her. Qin Shuk believed that Feng Ling had a solution to the problem. She didn't say much and turned to do her work. The television was broadcasting the chaos on the Phone Corporation's building and the jumping off the building. Originally, it was just a case of a company employee wanting to jump off a building to threaten a senior executive. This kind of thing happened frequently in major cities, countries, and fields, and it was not worthy of so much attention. However, under the influence of some people secretly adding fuel to the fire, almost all the television media in New York were mobilized to broadcast this news. Li Nanheng sat in his office and watched this scene. His expression did not change. "Boss, do you want me to send someone from New York over?" Xiao Su stood by the side and asked in a low voice after watching for a while. "No need. If Feng Ling can't handle such a small matter herself, she wouldn't have integrated a company in just a few months," Li Nanheng said, and turned to look at Yu Zheng. As Li Nanheng spoke, he turned to look at Yu Zheng. "Go monitor Tianming's movements. Don't interfere with the Feng Corporation's matters. Keep an eye on Tianming's people. This matter ends here. Don't let them have any chance to interfere." Yu Zheng nodded and left. Feng Mingyi really doesn't take Feng Ling seriously. He wants to use this method to force her to destroy the Feng Corporation. Since he wants to make the Feng Corporation his own, isn't this stupid method hurting the enemy by 1,000 and hurting himself by 800? Xiao Su muttered. Li Nanheng didn't speak anymore. He just watched the television broadcast. It was clear that if no one had been stirring up trouble, things wouldn't have developed to this extent. If Feng Ling didn't have the time to deal with Tianming, he didn't mind killing him before her attention shifted to Feng Mingyi. If she was willing to accept his help, it would be fine. However, if he made a move and she found out one day, she would definitely not thank him. Instead, she would scold him for being stupid. After all, he was the one who forced her to return to the Feng family and forced her to grow up. In the end, he actually thought of ways to help her grow up. Just thinking about it, he knew that she would definitely not be nice to him. CEO Feng. Should we ask someone to suppress the matter with the media first? There were a few executives by Feng Ling's side who were trying to come up with ideas. But in this situation, they were too far away from New York and could not help. Looking at Feng Ling, who was sitting behind the desk, the few loyal senior officials who had been in the company for many years saw the dark green seal in her hand. They all knew that it was something that Grandfather Feng had personally placed in her hand when he handed over the company's power to her. This seal symbolized that the future of the Feng Corporation would fall on Feng Ling. "It's not easy to suppress the media," Feng Ling said in a low voice. There was not a trace of nervousness on her fair face. Besides, if she only chose to suppress the media at this time and did not resolve the problem clearly, it would only be superficial. The people in the company would still be uneasy, and the company's image would also be severely damaged. It would be futile. She placed her hand on the dark green jade seal. In a moment, Feng Ling had already sorted out her emotions and stood up. She walked to the video camera that Qin Shuk had prepared to connect to the New York company. On the other side of the camera, countless media reporters were standing with the company's employees. The media soon discovered that Feng Ling had appeared. Countless cameras immediately focused on Feng Ling, who was far away in Washington. As for the employees present, no one cared about the situation. They only cared about whether they would be laid off and whether they would lose their jobs. "Turn my camera to the employee on the rooftop who wants to jump off the building." Feng Ling faced the camera, and her tone was cold. After she finished speaking, no one spoke for a while. A moment later, someone reacted and quickly brought the movable monitor to the rooftop. The employee who wanted to jump off the building was very agitated. He shouted that Feng Ling had recently gone to Washington and did not stay in New York. It must be because something had happened to the company. She was too weak to deal with it. So she hid in Washington, leaving the employees here to suffer losses. He cursed and cursed, unable to stop his agitation. "I'm indeed in Washington. Although I can only face you in this way, at least this is a chance for you to face the person in charge of the company as a low-level employee. What do you want to say? I'll give you a chance to say it. Do you want to jump down to see the King of Hell? Or do you want to take a few steps back and communicate with me? Communicate like a normal person?" Feng Ling's clear voice came from the monitor. The reporters who could see Feng Ling were also listening carefully. A cold breeze blew past the rooftop, and the agitated employee stood on the verge of collapse. Who wanted to die? No one wanted to. What they wanted was to let the company's higher-ups hear their voices. Although CEO Feng was not in New York, it could at least be considered a face-to-face method. The employee swallowed. The Feng Corporation's situation hasn't been good in the past few years, but we old employees have worked hard to work here. We've never thought of changing jobs. So many people want to poach us, but we can't bear to leave. But you, Feng Ling, have only been in office for a few months. Now you want to lay off employees? Are you trying to hound us old employees to death? The employee's eyes turned red as he spoke. His emotions, which had calmed down, became much more agitated. When did I say I wanted to lay off employees? Feng Ling's expression was indifferent. The employee on the rooftop was startled. Feng Ling was very calm. Every word of hers was filled with calmness and sharpness. From the top management of the company to all the employees of the company, have you ever heard me mention the word layoff? I'm very curious who spread this rumor. You know that the Feng Corporation has been in a bad state for the past few years, but now the company has been going downhill. When it fell to the bottom, it didn't even think of laying off employees. Now that it's rising and needs a lot of manpower, would I lay off employees? Chapter 1329. But the company's supervisors are also saying that the company is being targeted. It's a difficult thing to be targeted when you're on the rise. Everyone says that we can't hold on any longer. The employees on the rooftop tightly gripped the railings at the edge of the rooftop. Hearing this, Feng Ling coldly looked at the life-saving railing in his hand. I'm the CEO of the company. If I say I won't lay off the employees, I won't lay off the employees. Do the rumors they spread count, or do my words count? Feng Ling's voice was strong and clear. The employee on the rooftop knew that the camera was aimed at her. Her words were not only for him, but also for the thousands of employees of the company to see. So of course they counted. The restless employees in the other offices finally calmed down and believed that it was indeed just a rumor. You also know that the company is now being targeted. So this so-called targeting, in addition to blocking the various projects, is it possible that there is a psychological attack? Feng Ling said indifferently. Although the rumors are small, they are fearsome. When all the employees of a company are in a state of panic and can't even carry out their normal work, how can they have the capital to turn the tables? I'm afraid they won't even be able to maintain the most basic business. The other party is the one who will really collapse, will really lose completely. Feng Ling said coldly. Now I promise in front of all the employees of the company that I won't lay off anyone. In the future, if you hear any trouble, just call my private number to report it. If there are any problems, I'll use this method to explain to everyone. Rumors can not only destroy a person, but also a company. Most of you are old employees of the Feng Corporation. I believe that you pay more attention to your relationship with the company than a newcomer like me. Don't let these rumors destroy everyone's mentality at work. Now maintain your original state and wait for me to return. In the end, Feng Ling's tone gradually softened, and her words were no longer as sharp. However, the old employees were filled with emotions. That's right. They had been in the Feng Corporation for many years, and their feelings for this place were too deep. At this moment, the staff on the rooftop nodded submissively and could only wipe their tears with emotion. They were no longer in the mood to seek death. It's just a small rumor crisis, but it has alarmed all the major media in New York. It's really my fault for causing everyone to panic like this. The responsibility is also mine. It's my responsibility. I solemnly declare that as long as I'm here, the Feng Corporation will not collapse, and I won't let you lose your jobs. In just a few words, Feng Ling had already instilled in everyone the idea that as long as she was there, they would definitely be able to keep their jobs. After she took over the company, although most of the employees accepted this new president, many of the old people actually didn't take this young man seriously. And in this small crisis, the collapse of the employees' confidence was quietly resolved, and at the same time, Feng Ling's image as the new CEO became stronger in front of all the new and old employees. In the Feng Corporation's office building in New York, the employees in the office gradually returned to their posts to continue working, and the media gradually retreated. As they did not capture any surprising news, a big matter that had been stirred up became a small dispute in a company, so no media was willing to spread it around. An hour later, Feng Ling heard Qin Shik's report, and finally heaved a sigh of relief in her heart when she heard that the matter had calmed down. Although it's only a small dispute, stabilizing the employees' moods and calming things down is more important than explaining to the media. Feng Ling has clearly found the main point. Xiao Su commented. I didn't expect Feng Ling to have changed so much after leaving the base for just 2 to 3 years. Her heart is stronger than before, and she has indeed become more stable. If Feng Ling was only an outstanding member of 11 base back then, it can be said that her wings have hardened a lot, and she has indeed grown up. Xiao Su looked at Li Nanheng. Li Nanheng's ink-black eyes were fixed on Feng Ling's face on the screen. He did not shift his gaze away from her for even a minute. She's still immature, but at least she's more stable and calm than I imagined. After a long while, when everything on the screen ended, Li Nanheng's thin lips moved slightly. It's already very good. It's only been 2 to 3 years. You can't expect her to reach the level of a first-class enterprise management in 2 to 3 years, but it's already very good that she used the most appropriate method to resolve the crisis. Li Nanheng played with the remote control in his hand. Isn't the most appropriate way to run over to me and ask me to help her? Hug my leg and shout for hubby to help me? Xiao Su. Feng Ling had been busy in the company for 2 days and had barely left the company. She lived in the company because she did not want to contact CEO E anymore. However, right now the phone corporation was on the rise. No matter what, she had to obtain other resources. Otherwise, not only would she have come to Washington for nothing, but she would also have lost a lot. Have you really never considered asking Li Nanheng to help you? Right now, the phone corporation needs to rope in people everywhere. But isn't the most direct way to rope in the Li Corporation? Li Nanheng is really crucial to this matter. Don't give him a Cold War anymore. Soften up a little and express your stance to him. The phone corporation won't be so bumpy. Qin Shik knew that Feng Ling didn't like to hear this, but she had no choice but to suggest softly. Seeing that Feng Ling didn't speak, Qin Shik sighed again. In the past, I wasn't very familiar with Li Nanheng. In my impression, I often heard cousin Mingzhu talk about him, but the Li Nanheng I heard is a very cold, difficult to approach and bad-tempered man. However, from you, I feel that he's a man who loves you very much. No matter what, instead of pleasing so many people like CEO E, you might as well smile at Li Nanheng. This is more useful than anything else. Feng Ling pursed her lips and glanced at her. Qin Shik decided not to speak, but when she turned to walk out of the office, she muttered softly, "You're so patient with CEO E and the other bosses. You often smile at others, but you might not be able to achieve your goal. Those cooperation cases might not fall into your hands, but if you treat Li Nanheng like this, I'm afraid he can send the whole world to you." The office door opened and closed. The room was silent. Feng Ling lowered her head and continued to work. Suddenly, her phone vibrated. Chapter 1330. The person who called was Mr. Mike's assistant. He asked Feng Ling if she had time to go to Mr. Mike's resort this weekend. This was something that had been agreed upon at the reception a few days ago. Of course, Feng Ling had already set aside the weekend. However, because the weekend was specially free, she was especially busy in the past few days, so she didn't have much chance to visit little Momo. She could only occasionally confirm the child's safety based on the photos and text messages sent by the people taking care of little Momo in the hotel. In fact, there was nothing to confirm. After all, he was with Li Nanheng, and his safety was guaranteed. She only needed to make sure that the child was eating well and sleeping well. She wouldn't worry, nor would she worry when Leching, who had just left America. The weekend. This time, Feng Ling did not go alone. Instead, she brought Qin Shik to Mr. Mike's resort. After all, Mr. Mike was an outstanding figure in the American-Chinese business world. He was also a legendary figure in the older generation of the business world. He had hundreds of billions of assets under his name. Resorts that covered millions of square meters in the suburbs of Washington could be found all over the world. Furthermore, the decorations in each resort were luxurious, causing everyone who came in to be amazed. In this huge resort, there were all kinds of stadiums, entertainment venues, swimming pools, hot springs, sweatshops, fitness facilities, and so on. Mr. Mike invited everyone to come and arranged rooms for everyone. He asked everyone to stay here for the night to taste the 3 meals and service standards of the resort under his name. This is a true rich person. Qin Shuk walked beside Feng Ling, and the two of them retreated from the crowd in front of them. She whispered to Feng Ling, "I heard that Mr. Mike's assets have long surpassed Bill Gates, but he has never announced his assets to the public. Although he is famous in the business world, because he is too low-key, he has always been an invisible tycoon that everyone in the industry knows about. If it's the world capital, I think Mr. Mike is more qualified. Look here, this taste, this vision, and the one in front. It looks like a building decoration, but it's actually a statue of a severed arm from ancient Rome in the 80s. This kind of statue is enough to support a company that is about to go public. Not to mention here. Look, there are so many of them. Many of them are from the last century. This is only the Villa District in Washington. There will probably be many villas in other places. This shows that Mr. Mike is really super rich. Feng Ling did not know much about these things, but Qin Shuk had studied abroad and had seen and heard a lot. Feng Ling only knew about these things after hearing them. She turned to look at the ancient Roman statue and asked softly, "Is it so expensive?" "Of course, a statue from the 80s. Do you think this is a joke?" Qin Shuk smacked her lips as she spoke. But then again, with the Feng Corporation's current reputation and situation, it's really an honor to be invited by Mr. Mike. This time, Feng Ling did not say anything. She only glanced at Mr. Mike, who was chatting and laughing with the people around him. His reputation is indeed great in the business circle. But Mr. Mike from America and Mr. Zand from England, who do you think is better? As she spoke, in order not to let others hear, Feng Ling leaned slightly to Qin Shuk's ear. "I think Mr. Zand is slightly better." Qin Shuk's lips twitched. "You're always so protective of your own people. No matter how powerful Mr. Zand is, he's so much younger than Mr. Mike. He's still a junior, and we're juniors among juniors. Mr. Mike is a legend, okay? When I was studying abroad, I saw Mr. Mike's photo in foreign textbooks. He's really a legend. No wonder you insisted on coming with me to the resort this time. So Mr. Mike is your idol?" Feng Ling glanced at her. Qin Shuk snorted. "Although there is indeed a reason, it's more because I want to accompany you, okay? I want to see if Li Nanheng will bring little brother K out. I heard that little brother K rarely returns to 11 base and often walks outside. Perhaps he's following Li Nanheng now?" Feng Ling chuckled and turned to walk in. Most of the people who came today were the group of people who were at CEO Yi's villa that day. But there were also some people Feng Ling had never seen before. However, it was obvious that their roles were not simple. Occasionally, when she heard their conversations as they passed by her, she could vaguely hear the companies they were talking about. When she heard the names of 2 very large groups in America, Feng Ling turned to look at them. Unexpectedly, the people from EDK Group and AW Group were also invited. It was said that even Shine Group had been invited. However, the Mo family did not send anyone, and even Director Mo did not appear. Almost all of the leaders of the top companies in the American Chinese community had arrived. It could be seen that Mr. Mike's strength could not be underestimated. What was the saying again? If you wanted to gain a foothold in a place, you had to pay respect to the doc first. Mr. Mike was this doc. However, although the old man accepted the initiative and fawning of so many people, he did not seem to pay much attention to this. For example, Feng Ling had not appeared in front of the old man before, nor had she greeted him. She was not like some of the female CEOs present, who had been chatting with the old man with a smile and trembling. However, the old man did not seem to be affected by this. Feng Ling, who had not even smiled, was also included. She toured the resort, Every few steps, she could see various extravagant garden designs, as well as various souvenirs and ornaments worth over 100 million yuan. After walking for a long time, she walked into the front hall. Feng Ling stood at the back and did not squeeze forward, but she could hear Mr. Mike's voice coming from the microphone. His voice was old but powerful, and his opening remarks were exciting. When Feng Ling turned to look at the old man again, she accidentally met the ink-black eyes of the man sitting at the end of the seat. She paused and looked at Li Nanheng for a few seconds. She saw that the man, who was originally cold and indifferent to everything around him, seemed to have a faint smile in his eyes. If you smile at Li Nanheng like this, I'm afraid he can send the whole world to you. Qin Shuk's words suddenly reverberated in his ears. Feng Ling abruptly retracted her gaze. But even if she did not look at him, she could feel that the man did not withdraw his gaze through the crowd. Chapter 1331. Everything was peaceful in the resort, but Feng Ling vaguely felt that something was amiss. Li Nanheng was used to holding a cigarette in his right hand, and holding a cigarette in his right hand. Earlier, after coming out of the stadium, everyone was about to return to their rooms to change into light clothes, so that they could relax here comfortably. She accidentally turned her head, and saw that he was holding a cigarette in his left hand, while his right hand was by his side. Feng Ling's sharp gaze landed on Li Nanheng's right hand. He was wearing a suit shirt, and his sleeves covered his arm. She couldn't see anything. What are you looking at? Qin Shuk gently pushed her from behind. Let's go and change. After entering the phone corporation with you, I haven't had the chance to go anywhere for a relaxing vacation. Now that I'm here, let's relax for 2 days. Shall we go to the hot spring later? By the way, I heard that the hot spring here is the type of hot spring plaza. It's not like the hot spring hotels outside, which are hidden and separated. The hot springs here are all in the same place, one small pool next to another. Thankfully, the swimsuits I brought are all conservative. Otherwise, those stinky men would have seen them all. Qin Shuk said as she pulled Feng Ling away. I won't change into my swimsuit. Isn't there an office area beside the hot spring pool? I'll turn on the computer and accompany you. You still have to work when you're on vacation? I'm not interested in hot springs, Feng Ling said indifferently and entered the room. Qin Shuk knew her personality. Once she made up her mind, it was useless to persuade her. She simply changed into her swimsuit. Seeing that Feng Ling really took out her laptop, she was speechless. You really brought the laptop over? There are still some project documents I haven't read. I can accompany you while taking a look. Usually, I don't have the time to read these project documents. Today is just right. All right then. When they arrived at the hot spring pool, there were indeed many small pools of nearly 1,000 square meters that had been modified on the flat ground. There were all kinds of colors, and the water was very clean. There were also all kinds of blue swimming pools around them. The contours of the swimming pools were all kinds of beautiful and exquisite shapes. Qin Shuk chose an aromatherapy hot spring pool. Coincidentally, there was no one in the small pool. There was a table and chairs beside the pool that could be used for work. Feng Ling placed the computer there, but Qin Shuk couldn't bear to watch her sitting here busy with work. She coaxed her into soaking her feet, and even helped move the table and chair over. In the end, Feng Ling didn't refuse. She placed the table against the pool, rolled up her pants, and placed her calves into the hot spring water. As she soaked her feet, she turned slightly to look at the project documents on the computer. It was indeed very comfortable. Qin Shuk was also comfortable now. She soaked in the water and talked to her. Not long after, about half of the celebrities in the American Chinese circle who came here for vacation came here. Many people wanted to go to the gym to play for a while before coming. At this time, most of the women came. Everyone had nothing to do in their own pools. Occasionally, some people would talk about the recent events in the circle, and some people would whisper about which military base Li Nanheng was in. There were many different opinions about the Li family. CEO Li walk slowly. CEO Li, do you not have a girlfriend? Do you mind finding a younger one? I've heard my father mention you. I like your personality, family background and experience. If you don't accept me now, it's fine. Give me your number. Let's be friends first. CEO Li, do you have a girlfriend? Do you mind finding a younger one? Li Nanheng's eyes lit up, and he looked at Li Nanheng, who had just come out of the villa room in the resort. She followed him all the way. It's fine if you don't accept me now. Give me your number. We can be friends first. Li Nanheng was expressionless the entire time. He did not even look at the noisy girl who had been following him. Seeing that he did not even respond, the young lady of the O Corporation was not discouraged. She quickly followed his footsteps. Really, don't think I'm young. Although I'm 18 years old, I'm already very mature. I can also get married at this age in America. Assistant Yu Zheng. CEO Li, hey CEO Li, don't ignore me. The young lady of the O family could not catch up to him, so she quickly jogged to catch up to him. Then, she blocked in front of Li Nanheng and stretched out her arms to raise her head to look at the tall and cold man in front of her. Finally, he glanced at her because of her sudden movement. The moment their eyes met, the young lady of the O family felt as though her heart had been struck. Her cheeks instantly heated up, and her voice trembled nervously. I just want to get to know you. And they all said that you don't have a girlfriend. Since you don't have a girlfriend, it's not a problem for me to chase you, right? I don't usually talk so much. I just want to get to know you. CEO Li, look. Li Nanheng looked at the young lady of the O family, who was wearing a pink lace bikini in front of him. His expression did not change. Not interested. I'll be interested once I get to know you. The young lady of the O family smiled and was about to approach him. Her face was still a little red. However, the moment she approached, the man frowned. He took a step to the side and turned to walk in another direction. Hey you? The young lady of the O family turned around and saw that she really couldn't tease this man. She immediately stomped her feet in anger and quickly ran after him. She didn't expect CEO Li to also go to the hot spring. The young lady of the O family happened to change into a swimsuit and wanted to go over. She happily moved forward and followed behind him as she said, CEO Li is going to the hot spring too? I'm going too. Why didn't you change your clothes? Li Nanheng acted as though he didn't hear her and walked forward. Yu Zheng couldn't help but whisper, Miss O, our CEO Li has something to do there. Mr. Mike has asked CEO Li to have tea in the tea room next door, not to soak in the hot spring. Of course, he doesn't need to change his clothes. Oh, tea. I can drink tea too. CEO Li, I'll drink with you. As they spoke, they had already walked near the hot spring. They happened to pass by a small path to the tea room. Right now, the small path was filled with water. The young lady of the O family was focused on the tall man in front of her and didn't pay attention. She slipped and suddenly screamed. With a plop, she fell into the pool that was about 1.8 meters deep. Chapter 1332. The young lady of the O family was wearing a bikini, but she didn't seem to know how to swim. She struggled desperately in the pool and cried for help. Yu Zheng looked back and estimated that she was only a little more than 1.6 meters tall. There was indeed a possibility of drowning in this deep pool. He quickly called out to Li Nanheng, CEO Li. Hearing this, Li Nanheng turned back and saw the person who was struggling in the pool, but did not sink for a long time. He did not speak. At this time, other people who were nearby had already surrounded them. They immediately shouted, Aya, isn't this the young lady of the O family? How did she fall into the pool? Quickly save her. Yes, hurry up and save her. There were a lot of onlookers. Most of them knew how to swim, but they kept shouting for others to save her, especially a young man who was shouting very loudly. He kept shouting, Aya, Miss O doesn't know how to swim. Hurry up and save her. CEO Li, I saw Miss O follow you here just now, right? Hurry up and save her. Li Nanheng replied expressionlessly. He glanced coldly at the person who was gradually sinking in the pool, and signaled the young man, who had just spoken, to go down and save her. Seeing that CEO Li was really unmoved, the young man looked at the pool again, and was about to jump in. Fortunately, at this moment, the manager of the resort's swimming pool area came over. When he saw the situation, he jumped down and pulled her out of the pool. The young lady of the O family was placed flat on the platform by the pool. A group of people surrounded her. The young man was afraid that she would reveal something, because she was wearing so little. So he quickly pulled a towel over and covered her body. Then he patted her face and shouted, wake up, what should we do? Seoli, Miss O did follow you here just now, didn't she? Why did she suddenly fall into the water? The young man turned around and suddenly asked anxiously. Li Nanheng glanced at him coldly. I was in a hurry here. You could even notice that she was following me? The young man's expression froze for a moment. He couldn't stand Li Nanheng's cold and sharp gaze that seemed to see through everything. He quickly retracted his gaze and continued to pat the unconscious young lady of the O family. What should we do? The people around were all saying that they needed to call an ambulance. Even Mr. Mike was alarmed and had already rushed over. Seeing that she was indeed unconscious, Li Nanheng took 2 steps closer and lowered his eyes to look at the young lady of the O family lying there. How long until the ambulance arrives? What do we do now? Artificial respiration, someone said. Yes, CPR. The young man suddenly raised his eyes and looked directly at Li Nanheng, who had just walked over. CEO Li, quick, help her with CPR. Li Nanheng frowned. Do you know how to do artificial respiration? Of course I won't. The young man said anxiously. Hurry up and save him, GM Li. Oh, I won't either. Yuzheng almost laughed out loud. More and more people gathered here. Li Nanheng glanced at the young lady of the O family who was lying there, and said without changing his expression. I remember that CEO Chen is a famous swimming enthusiast in the circle. He must be quite proficient in artificial respiration. Let CEO Chen do it. The young man turned to look. CEO Chen had a fat head and big ears. He was wearing tight black swimming trunks and was in his 40s. His face was covered with all kinds of red and unhealthy red pimples. They were of different sizes, and his face was dripping with water. When he heard this, he rushed forward to help save her. However, the young lady of the O family, who was still lying there, suddenly coughed at this moment. She quickly sat up before CEO Chen came over to help her with artificial respiration. She turned to look at Li Nanheng awkwardly, but Li Nanheng had already left without looking back. The hot spring pool where Feng Ling and Qin Shuk were in was relatively far from the swimming pool, so she was not clear about what was happening over there. Feng Ling was focused on the project documents on the computer, while Qin Shuk was drowsy in the pool. From beginning to end, she did not notice the boring episode over there. After returning to her room from the hot spring pool, Qin Shuk still wanted to go play golf. This time, Feng Ling did not accompany her. Seeing that she had been busy at the hot spring pool for the entire afternoon, Qin Shuk did not force her. She only told Feng Ling to remember to order some food for her when it was dinner time and left. Feng Ling turned off the computer and looked at the time. It was 5 o'clock in the afternoon. It was probably dinner time at 6 o'clock. After thinking for a moment, she called Li Nanheng, but he did not answer. She called Yu Zheng and learned that Li Nanheng had just returned to his room and was probably resting. After confirming that Li Nanheng was in his room, Feng Ling got up and walked out. Mr. Mike's resort was very big. It took more than 10 minutes to walk from her resort villa to Li Nanheng's villa. After entering, Yu Zheng saw her and quickly greeted her politely. Miss Feng, is he still in the room? Yes, but CEO Li just said he wanted to rest. Are you looking for him, Miss Feng? Feng Ling nodded but did not explain. Yu Zheng was about to say something when he suddenly saw that she was holding a box of medicine in her hand. He immediately shut his mouth. He didn't expect that this Miss Feng, who usually looked cold and unapproachable, was quite observant. She could actually see that CEO Li's arm was injured. Do you have a room card? Feng Ling asked. Oh yes. After all, Yu Zheng had personally seen how much CEO Li cared about Feng Ling. If it was anyone else, he definitely wouldn't dare to hand over the room card. But if it was Miss Feng, of course, it was a different story. After receiving the room card from Yu Zheng, Feng Ling thanked him and went to Li Nanheng's room. She gently knocked on the door twice, but no one responded. She swiped the card and went in. After entering, She heard the sound of water splashing from the bathroom. Feng Ling turned her gaze over and saw that although there was the sound of water, the bathroom door was open. As soon as she walked over, she saw the man standing inside, who was using his left hand to change his shirt with some difficulty. The shirt he had just changed into was stained with blood and was being washed underwater. He had just put on his new shirt, but because his left hand was not convenient, he had not buttoned it up. Suddenly hearing her approaching footsteps, the man in the bathroom abruptly raised his eyes and met her gaze. As expected, he hadn't used his right hand today, because his arm was injured. Feng Ling walked over with the medicine. How did you get injured? Chapter 1333. Li Nanheng looked at her for a moment, then lowered his head to look at his arm. He gently moved it twice, silently indicating that the injury was not serious. It's okay. It's not a big problem. It's just a superficial wound. A superficial wound will make you unable to move your entire right hand for a day. Feng Ling had been injured before. She wouldn't be fooled so easily. She walked in and stood in front of him. Raise your hand. Let me take a look. Li Nanheng lowered his eyes to look at the woman who had already approached. He glanced at her long hair hanging behind her shoulders, and then at her soft and comfortable clothes. It was clear that she had just returned to her room and was about to rest, but she suddenly came to his place. He smiled. Did you specially come to care about me? Feng Ling did not answer. She watched as he still did not dare to move his arm. She reached out and tugged at the unbuttoned sleeve of his shirt. When she saw that there was a circle of white gauze wrapped around it, extending from his wrist to his elbow, it could be seen that the area of the wound was very large. She paused and then raised her eyes to look at him. How did you get hurt? Meeting her sharp gaze, Li Nanheng smiled lightly. I met a sworn enemy from when I was on a mission in the base. The other party discovered my current whereabouts, and their revenge could be seen everywhere. I'm outside, unlike in the base. There are many things that I need to personally appear to ask about. No matter how careful I am, I will inevitably be ambushed. When I was surrounded, the other party had knives in their hands. Before I broke out of the encirclement, I was inevitably cut twice on my arm. Fortunately, the bones were not broken, but the cuts were a little deeper. If that was the case, the medicine she brought would be useless. Feng Ling placed the tube of wound medicine in her hand on the marble table beside the sink. Since you know you're being followed by your sworn enemy, why didn't you transfer people from the base over? Didn't you even arrange for a bodyguard to come to the resort this time? Li Nanheng smiled. Even bodyguards can't beat me. Why do I need them? At least there are more people. If something really happens, you don't have to break out of the encirclement alone. The people around you are all in the business circle. Assistant you probably doesn't know what to do when he encounters such a thing. Can't you arrange a few more people around you? Why didn't Xiao Su follow you? As Feng Ling spoke, she raised her hand to touch the gauze on his arm, but her fingers stopped a centimeter away. Afraid that she would hurt him, she simply put her hand down. Do you really care about me? The man looked down at her with a deep smile in his eyes. Feng Ling looked at him coldly. I noticed that there seems to be something wrong with your arm today. I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened. Coming over to ask is also a form of concern. Li Nanheng smiled with satisfaction. What should I do? It's probably because I've been ignored by you for too long. You just came over to look at me, and I'm so satisfied that I'm about to swell up. Feng. Crazy. Now that she had seen it, she knew what kind of injury it was and how it was injured. There was nothing to doubt. This kind of simple medicine was useless. She should just leave and go back to her room. Now that she had seen it, she knew what kind of injury it was and how it was injured. Aren't you afraid that the wound will get infected? She said in a muffled voice. Did you bring medicine and gauze over? I'll help you deal with it. Didn't you change the medicine on your arm when you came? It's still wet. Aren't you afraid that the wound will get infected? She said in a muffled voice. Did you bring medicine and gauze over? I'll help you deal with it. Li Nanheng looked down at her and did not speak. Feng Ling looked up at him. I'm talking to you, Li Nanheng. And? Ah, yes, I brought it, but I'll call you Jingyin. Don't reach out. Li Nanheng smiled. He was still smiling. Feng Ling rolled her eyes at him and did not waste any more time talking to him. She turned to look for Yu Zheng and asked for 2 kinds of medicine and gauze from him before returning. Seeing that the man was still standing in the bathroom, she wanted to call him out, but thinking that it was convenient to wash there, she walked into the bathroom, placed the things aside, and gestured for him to raise his hand. Li Nanheng looked at her for a while and did not resist. He raised his arm and handed it to her. Afraid of hurting him, she carefully untied the gauze. As she untied it, she saw that more and more blood seeped out. When the entire gauze was removed, she saw the 2 bone-deep wounds on his arm. Each one was about 7 or 8 centimeters long. With such deep wounds, no matter how good the medicine was, there would still be a lot of blood. Besides, he didn't rest at home even though he was injured. He actually came to this resort to participate in all kinds of social activities. Didn't she say that he didn't show up for these small activities? Feng Ling guessed a possibility. She only used a towel to avoid his wound and wiped the blood off his arm. Then she used a medical disinfectant cotton to wipe his wound clean. She picked up the medicine she brought and compared it with the medicine Yu Zheng had given her. She compared the effect of the 2 before helping him apply the medicine. The wound was so deep that it would definitely hurt a lot when applying the medicine, but Li Nanheng didn't seem to feel the pain. He just looked at her and watched her apply the medicine for him. It was as though all the time in this world had stopped. It was as though all he wanted was for Feng Ling to be safe in front of him. When she helped him wrap the gauze again, Li Nanheng suddenly smiled. What are you smiling at? Feng Ling glanced at him in confusion. It's been so long since you've touched these wounds. Your bandaging skills are not bad. You're not rusty, the man commented. Feng Ling didn't speak, but continued to slowly bandage him. Although she had already left the circle and no longer had her friends and brothers get injured like before. And in this circle, it wasn't her body that got hurt, but her mind, after all, had already been deeply rooted in her bones. Although she hadn't touched these things for a long time, it didn't mean that she would forget how to bandage them. Although she hadn't touched them for a long time, it didn't mean that she would forget how to bandage them. Li Nanheng, I suggest you arrange some bodyguards by your side. Didn't you bring 2 last time at the villa? Why didn't you bring them to the resort this time? If I knew you were here, why would I bring bodyguards? If the 2 of us work together, how many people can beat us? She didn't know if the man was joking or serious, but when Feng Ling looked at him, she saw that his gaze and expression were serious. W. 4M. Chapter 1334. Feng Ling sneered and pointed at his bandaged arm. You're injured like this, and it's your right arm. Even if you fight me now, you might not be able to defeat me. Who do you think you are when your right arm can't exert any strength? You don't even have a foothold. I can knock you down in a few moves. Really? It's been a long time since I've seen it. Why don't you try knocking me down now? The man lowered his head and leaned close to her. Feng Ling raised her hand and pushed his forehead. I'm being serious. Don't get so close to me. I'm not being serious. Li Nanheng raised his brows and suddenly glanced meaningfully at the bed outside the bathroom. Otherwise, what do you think I meant by do it? Did you think wrongly? Li Nanheng. Feng Ling looked at him coldly. The man raised his brows. And I'm listening. Feng Ling didn't want to talk to him anymore. She lowered her head to help him tie the gauze properly. After confirming that it was much better, and that the gauze wouldn't be torn open, because he was changing back and forth, she raised her head. All right, be careful. Don't touch the water again. As she spoke, she turned to take the shirt out of the sink. However, as she turned around, her long hair suddenly hooked onto the 2 buttons on the front of his shirt. She abruptly turned around and felt a pain on her head. She immediately paused and turned back in surprise. Li Nanheng also immediately lowered his head to look. Why are you entangled? At this moment, Feng Ling also glanced sideways and saw that a few strands of her hair were entangled in the buttons of his shirt. She quickly took a step back, But this time, she happened to bump into the man's arms. She raised her hand to pull her hair down, but Li Nanheng raised his hand at the same time. Don't pull so hard. Your hair will break. He had known Feng Ling for so many years, but this was the first time he had made such a scene because of her hair. Li Nanheng didn't know whether to cry or laugh. His right arm was inconvenient, so he could only raise his left hand to try to untie her hair. Wait a minute. Don't move. Let me do it. Feng Ling could only stand there without moving. She felt the man's hand carefully unraveling her hair, but after waiting for a few minutes, there was no effect. She turned her head again, but because of this movement, Li Nanheng suddenly frowned. I told you not to move. I was just about to untie it, but when I moved, it became even tighter. Feng Ling. It was not convenient for her to turn her head like this. No matter how long her hair was, it was not particularly long. When she turned her head like this, she could only see from the corner of her eye where it was entangled. However, it was actually quite difficult for her to turn around and untie it herself, unless her entire body was completely pressed against his arms. But even if she really pressed against him, she could not raise her hand to untie it. The man frowned. His left hand was not as nimble as his right hand to untie things. When she suddenly turned around, the ends of her hair that were about to be untied tightened again. This time, it was as though he had tied a dead knot. Can you untie it or not? If you can't, just break it. Feng Ling saw that he had been untying it for a long time and frowned. There's no need. Li Nanheng lowered his head and said seriously, such beautiful hair. My heart will ache if I break even one strand of it. Then you really don't have to. Normal people will lose dozens of hairs on average every day. No matter how good my hair is, I'm still a normal person. Do you have to feel sorry for me every day? As Feng Ling spoke, she reached out to pick up the small scissors she had used to cut the gauze and handed it to him. Just cut that strand. Li Nanheng didn't even look at the scissors she handed him. He only said, no. Feng Ling glanced at him. You did it on purpose. The man still lowered his head and seriously untied her hair. Your hair is on your body. How could I do it on purpose? Feng Ling. She didn't speak. Anyway, she would untie it sooner or later. She stood there silently and let him untie it. However, her hair was a little wavy now. It was easy for it to become a dead knot if she accidentally wrapped it around his buttons. Li Nanheng didn't want to break her hair. It took him more than 10 minutes to untie one button. There was another button that was even tighter. He continued to untie it. At this moment, there was suddenly a knock on the door. Yu Zheng's voice came from outside. CEO Li, Mr. Mike is here. He's outside. He wants to see you. Mr. Mike? He came at this time? Feng Ling's heart skipped a beat. Mr. Mike was a famous figure in the American business circle. More importantly, she wasn't familiar with him. Mr. Mike had probably only heard some rumors about her and Li Nanheng, but people at his age didn't care much about these rumors. However, if he saw her tugging at the disheveled Li Nanheng in the bathroom, would she still be able to survive in the business world in the future? She quickly tried to tear off the strand of hair. Seeing her motive, Li Nanheng frowned and pressed her down. It's too late for you to go out now. Don't pull. Feng Ling turned to look at him, frowned and lowered her voice. What do we do now? It won't matter if I'm seen. I'm unmarried and you're unmarried. Everyone outside says that I'm your fiancé. What are you afraid of? The man looked confident. Feng Ling glared at him. I don't want to be seen. Then hide. When Li Nanheng heard the sound of the door, he immediately lowered the bathroom curtain and pushed Feng Ling in. Then he stood outside the curtain and lowered his head to untie her hair. How can I hide like this? Feng Ling didn't understand, but she had already entered behind the curtain. Her body was blocked by the curtain, and only a strand of hair was pulled on his button. However, the man's body also blocked this side. His back was facing the outside of the bathroom, so he shouldn't be able to see anything. After all, this was Mr. Mike's place. Yu Zheng only knocked on the door to inform him, and couldn't say too much to stop him. Mr. Mike had already walked in. Hearing the footsteps outside and Mr. Mike's smiling voice, Feng Ling suddenly became nervous. If it was just the two of them talking in the room, it would be fine. However, Li Nanheng's shirt was not buttoned, and his clothes were disheveled. She also came in her underwear, and did not look like she was here to talk about work. Furthermore, she was in the bathroom with her hair tangled up. It looked as ambiguous as it could be, especially now that she was still hiding behind the curtain of the bathroom. If she was discovered in this situation, there was no guarantee that she would be in trouble. She looked around the bathroom, but there was no other place to hide behind the curtain. "Don't move," Li Nanheng shouted in a low voice that only she could hear. His fingers continued to fight on his button. W. 4M. Chapter 1335. Feng Ling had no choice but to stop moving. When Mr. Mike had already walked out of the bathroom, Feng Ling's entire body tensed up. Coincidentally, at this moment, Li Nanheng tugged down the buttons on his shirt with force. Feng Ling's hair instantly regained its freedom. She took a step back into the curtain, and the curtain blocked her. At this moment, Li Nanheng turned to look at the person outside the bathroom. He was still holding the button that he had just pulled off. Mr. Mike looked at Li Nanheng in surprise. "What's wrong?" "I was slightly injured. I just bandaged it." Li Nanheng's expression was calm and indifferent, as though there was nothing behind the curtain. He turned around and walked out. At the same time, he casually tugged at the collar of his shirt. "It's not convenient to wear clothes with my left hand. I just put on the shirt, but the button scratched a hook in the bathroom and was torn off. I have to change into another one later. It's troublesome." Mr. Mike finally understood. "I see. Then change your clothes first." Li Nanheng responded indifferently. He turned around to get another shirt and changed into it. During this time, Mr. Mike asked if he needed help. Li Nanheng sighed and smiled. "It's fine, there's no need." Feng Ling frowned when she heard this. Why was he still trying to be brave? Since it was inconvenient for his left hand, he asked Mr. Mike to help him wear it. The old man didn't even mind, but he was trying to be brave himself. After listening for a while, she suddenly heard Li Nanheng close the bathroom door outside. It was good to close it. This way, she wouldn't be too stiff inside. She heard the man's footsteps getting further and further away. His room was quite big, and there were a few suites suitable for drinking tea and talking. He probably went there. Feng Ling walked out from behind the curtain and leaned against the bathroom door to listen for a while. She hesitated if she should leave now, but if she bumped into Mr. Mike or Mr. Mike's secretary, an assistant saw her outside, forget it. She turned back to look at the shirt in the sink. She took advantage of the soundproofing of the bathroom and walked over to wash the shirt. Although this kind of high-end shirt couldn't be washed, it was already soaked in water anyway. He couldn't take it out dripping wet. He had to wash it first. Otherwise, there was nothing to do. Qin Shik sent her a message asking if she had rested. Feng Ling replied that she was outside and not in the room. If she wanted to eat anything for dinner, she could order it in the kitchen of the resort later. Qin Shik then sent another photo. In the photo was her gym in the resort. Many young handsome men were exercising there. She specially took a few photos of them and sent them to her. "I didn't expect that the big shots in the business circle that Mr. Mike invited weren't all bald old men with beer bellies. There were also so many handsome young men with good figures." Feng Ling looked at it speechlessly and replied, "You playboy, don't you want your little brother K anymore? K is on missions all day and is busy in the base. He's so straight that it's scary. When I'm free, I send him a message to ask him out for a meal, but he's embarrassed. He's too boring. Although he's handsome, he's not suitable for me. How can there be that many interesting men? Yes, look at this." Qin Shik sent another photo of a young man's back. "Isn't this handsome?" Feng Ling, "It's just a back. You're asking me if he's handsome? I've seen the front, but he's talking to someone with his back to me. It's not appropriate for me to take a photo from the front, right?" Qin Shik continued, "I heard that he's from China. He seems to be the current head of the Ling Xiao group. His name is something like Xiao something. I heard him talking to those celebrities. I feel that this man is super charming. I just don't know if he's married." "Ling Xiao group?" Feng Ling's hand that was holding the phone paused for a moment as though she had thought of something. Xiao Lei? Ah, yes, yes, yes. This little brother's background is very wild. His name is also so wild, ha ha ha. He clearly doesn't look easy to get along with, but his words are very humorous. I think he's something. Feng Ling sighed with a smile. Wasn't this the person who Jin Wan had secretly discussed with her as her biological brother? Later, it seemed that he was indeed her biological brother. It was said that this young master of the Xiao family was not someone to be trifled with. His temper was very bad. The point was, why did she remember that this young master of the Xiao family had some conflicts with Qin sighting? Control yourself. Don't flirt with just anyone. Feng Ling could only say this to her. Don't worry. I'm reliable. Was Qin Shuk reliable? The little love-struck fool who couldn't move when she saw a good-looking man. Feng Ling chuckled inwardly. Mr. Mike sat with Li Nanheng for about an hour. She didn't know what they talked about. Later, Feng Ling really had nothing to do in the bathroom, so she took out her phone and played various small games that Qin Shuk had downloaded for her. She had never played these before and thought it was very simple, but in the end, she found that she knew nothing about them. She couldn't even pass the various checkpoints. She was using the little person in her phone to try her best to jump up, but she failed again and again. Suddenly, the bathroom door was pulled open. The first thing Li Nanheng saw when he opened the door was Feng Ling, who was usually cold and avoiding people, squatting in the bathroom and playing small games on her phone. She was playing very seriously. The man raised his good-looking eyebrows. Seeing that she hadn't noticed that he had come in, he walked over and bent down behind her. Press left up. Yes, left right. Change to the right this time. Yes, just like this. Keep your fingers pressed down and don't let go. Right. Feng Ling kept jumping up according to Li Nanheng's instructions. When the words finally appeared on her phone, she let out a long breath and suddenly paused. She turned her eyes abruptly and almost hit the man's chin. Li Nanheng was bending down to look at her. When he suddenly turned his head and looked at her closely, the man raised his eyebrows. Feng Ling quickly stood up, but after squatting for a long time, her legs were a little numb. She reached out to the marble platform by the side, stabilized her body, and put the phone back into the small pocket of her clothes. She then looked out. Mr. Mike left. He left. Then I should go too. Feng Ling glanced at his arm again. He was wearing a shirt, and she couldn't see the gauze inside. However, he didn't touch the water and didn't make any big movements. She walked around him and walked out. However, she had only taken 2 or 3 steps when the man stretched out his long arm and held her with his injured arm. He pulled her back. Feng Ling noticed his arm and subconsciously didn't dare to struggle too hard. She quickly stabilized her body that almost fell back into his arms and turned to look at him. Li Nanheng lowered his eyes. Because of this half-hug, he looked at her closely. It's already dinner time. Why don't you stay for dinner before leaving? Seeing that Feng Ling's hair is working so hard, let's leave a monthly ticket before leaving, okay? W. 4M. Chapter 1336. I won't eat. Shuk will eat with me when she comes back from the gym. I can't leave her alone. I believe that as long as she knows that you're having dinner with me, she'll be happy to be left alone. The man didn't let go of her. Instead, he stretched out his other arm and hugged her from behind. However, he didn't hug her tightly. He just held her loosely like this. His voice was pressed against the back of her ear. It was warm and light, but it also had a faint hoarseness that belonged to him. Feng Ling actually wanted to ask when he had bribed Qin Shuk. However, after thinking about it, a girl with a temper like Qin Shuk's couldn't be easily bribed. She was probably really willing. This was even more difficult to deal with. For some reason, there was a little fangirl who wanted to help Gu Nanheng. Stay just for dinner, eh? The man's voice was still pressed against her ear. You came to help me bandage my wound. I should treat you to a meal to thank you. This is Mr. Mike's place. What kind of treat are you? You mean, after we leave the resort, if I say I want to treat you to a meal, Will you come out to see me alone? Feng Ling's expression was cold. Forget it. What do you want to eat? The man curved his lips behind her and raised his hand to touch her head, just like in the past. However, in the past, her short hair was soft and fluffy. Now it was still soft, but it was long hair, which made his heart itch uncontrollably. The kitchen in the resort has sent a menu to every room. It's probably with Yu Zheng. Go tell Yu Zheng and order a few dishes. Let's eat, Li Nanheng said as he buttoned his shirt cuffs. As Li Nanheng spoke, he buttoned up his shirt cuffs. Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something and said casually, "Give me 2 more bottles of older red wine. You know I can't hold my liquor well. Why do you want red wine?" Feng Ling turned back to look at him. The man was still buttoning up his shirt. He looked so focused that she couldn't see anything. He didn't even raise his head. You've been in the business circle for so long, but you haven't even trained your alcohol tolerance. How are you going to survive? Since I can train you from a little girl with low stamina to a sniper with high stamina and endurance in swimming, I can also train your alcohol tolerance. Even if you drink too much at my place, nothing will happen. At most, I will take advantage of you. Besides, it's not like you haven't slept with me before. If something really happens, you won't lose anything. It's much better than getting drunk at other places. Feng Ling listened to the man's shameless words and did not move. She only watched him coldly. Sensing that she didn't order, Li Nanheng glanced at her again and smiled faintly. I'm just joking. I won't do anything to you even if I drink too much. Drink some red wine to liven things up. I'll get Qin Shuk to pick you up later. Do you think I can trust you? Feng Ling was expressionless. So, am I really a beast in your eyes? Li Nanheng asked. Feng Ling paused. Animal? She could be considered one. But she couldn't be considered one. What he did to her when he drove up the mountain was indeed beastly. But from the way he made it up to her, she could tell that he was really angry and agitated. They had known each other for so many years, and that was the only time he had been agitated. Considering all the things that had happened in the past, she didn't take it to heart. By now, that little bit of anger had long faded away. Although Feng Ling did not speak, she turned to look for Yu Zheng. After taking the menu, she ordered a few dishes that she and Li Nanheng were used to eating. After thinking for a few seconds, she said, "Ask them to send 2 bottles of red wine over. I want them to be older. If the price is too expensive, I'll pay for it. There's no need for Mr. Mike to spend so much money." All right. Yu Zheng nodded and did not ask anything else. He followed Feng Ling's request and went out to call for help. When she returned to her room, she suddenly heard Li Nanheng's phone ring. She turned to look at him. The man picked up his phone, looked at the caller ID, and picked up the call. From his tone, it should be about work, so Feng Ling did not disturb him. She went back to the bathroom and took out the shirt she had washed earlier. She looked around and finally found an ironing machine and a folding table for ironing clothes in the cabinet by the bathroom. She opened the folding table, plugged in the ironing machine, and took out the shirt she had just washed to try to iron it. After Li Nanheng put down the phone, he turned back to see Feng Ling standing there to iron his clothes. The young and inexperienced boy in the past had now become a pure little woman. Because she was bent over, her long hair spread out on her shoulders and behind her back, getting in the way from time to time. She had to raise one hand to push back the long hair on one side, or use her fingers to tuck the long hair on her cheeks behind her ears. Her movements were natural and skillful. She was wearing a set of very soft white clothes. Although it was not a skirt, it had a bit of gauze texture, which inexplicably made her look like a fairy. Her face without any makeup was excessively fair and tender. A pair of clear and bright eyes were seriously looking at the shirt on the flat table as she slowly moved the ironing machine. This scene was like a husband who had just returned home from work and saw his wife washing and ironing his clothes. After tossing and turning for so many years, at this moment, Li Nanheng suddenly understood what he wanted. Whether it was in the base, the cabin he built in the jungle, or now, what he wanted was to give Feng Ling a stable home. whether she wanted to live a peaceful life at home without worrying about anything or to go out. He had to at least give her a complete and safe home behind her. She didn't have to wander around like when she was young, and could enjoy everything in his world. When Feng Ling lowered her head to iron the clothes, she was too focused because she rarely ironed clothes. In the past, when she was in the base, she was not in the business circle. She just needed to wash her clothes clean, and didn't need to be neat and exquisite. After returning to the Feng family, there were servants, secretaries, and assistants by her side. There was no need for her to do this kind of thing. She only got drenched in the rain twice when she was on a business trip, and rushed back to her room to iron it twice. The first time, she accidentally burned her clothes. She was too focused. When Li Nanhing approached, she was still looking down at the clothes. As she ironed, she said, "This kind of shirt can only be taken to a high-end laundry outside for dry cleaning, or washed in other ways. I don't know if it can still be worn after washing. Let me iron it first." Chapter 1337. However, as soon as Feng Ling's voice fell, the man suddenly held her waist. The moment she paused, he pressed her into his arms. Feng Ling asked in a low voice, "What are you doing?" Before she could finish her words, the man's burning kiss pressed down. Li Nanheng held her waist with one hand and clasped her chin with the other, forcing her to raise her head and accept his surging kiss. Feng Ling's lips were slightly open because she hadn't finished speaking. As a result, he easily pried open her teeth, entangled her tongue, pressed against the root of her tongue, and sucked hard as though he wanted to swallow her whole. Feng Ling anxiously grunted. Her instinctive reaction was to quickly turn off the power of the ironing machine. Otherwise, the shirt would definitely be ruined. Under her resistance, the man seemed to instantly understand her main intention. He still held her tightly with one hand, and reached out with the other to press the switch under the ironing machine. As he cut off the power, he held her tightly. Li Nanheng's domineering kiss almost swept away all her dazed emotions. His hot and strong breath filled her mouth, causing her entire body to tremble instinctively. All her strength seemed to be taken away by this man in an instant. Feng Ling's legs softened. As the man's kiss deepened, it inexplicably reminded her of the time when she lived in the jungle. Every time she wanted to sleep well at night, he would kiss her until her entire body went limp, and she had no choice but to go to bed with him. It was precisely because of those memories that Feng Ling's entire body instinctively softened, because of the familiar feeling of the past. Because he kissed her too fiercely, his heavy breathing brushed against her facial features, forcing her to unknowingly burst into tears. More importantly, the man carried her and turned to sit on the fabric sofa at the side. She was forcefully pressed onto his lap and held in his arms. There was almost no space between the two of them, and they were tightly pressed against each other. The place under her body that was pressed against her was an existence that couldn't be ignored. As the man kissed her deeply, it became more and more aggressive. It was as though he was ready to give her a fatal blow at any time. Feng Ling pressed her hands against the man's hard chest. She could only hear his deep breathing and the ambiguous sound of their lips and tongues touching. Even her resisting whimpers were completely blocked by his mouth. Li Nanheng's scorching palm was branded on her waist. As though he was still not satisfied, his hand moved heavily on her body. Feng Ling was forced to lean against him to welcome another wave of hot kisses. After a long time, Li Nanheng finally let go of her red and swollen lips. He panted, his deep and dark gaze still on her face. At this time, Feng Ling was finally able to take a good breath. She had to admit that her entire body was soft, and her cheeks were red. Her black and white eyes seemed to have been washed several times, hazy and glistening with tears. More importantly, her eyes were a little dazed. It was as though she had only been ironing clothes. Why was she suddenly carried over and kissed for so long? She felt as though her soul had left her body. She felt as though she had returned to the jungle. She was busy with the small matters in the cabin all day, busy with eating and dressing, and at the same time, being carried and kissed by this man at any time. Seeing that she had not returned to her senses for a long time, Li Nanheng held her face, his Adam's apple moved, and he kissed Feng Ling's lips again. You. Feng Ling suddenly returned to herself, and quickly pressed her hands against his chest to prevent him from approaching. Her voice was a little broken from the kiss. Li Nanheng, you. If he continued kissing her, she really couldn't take it. Li Nanheng had always been very aggressive, but he had always restrained all his aggression in front of her, and weakened his strong and domineering instincts. But now, this man who no longer suppressed everything made her almost unable to resist. 10 months ago, she didn't expect that he would be in the car. Now she knew that this man could really do anything when he didn't restrain himself. A red light lit up in her heart, warning her that this man would push her down on the bed at any time. Even if his arm was injured, he could still press her here, and do whatever he wanted. In the past he was always too polite to her, and now, Li Nanheng was often too rude to her. Because of her struggle, Li Nanheng only paused for a moment before pressing her hands down. He did not allow her to refuse, and continued kissing her. He bit her lips and kissed her until her head was dizzy. The wall of sobriety seemed to have been shattered. No, she only came to see the situation, because of his arm injury. It was not like what Qin Shik had said. Instead of smiling at those difficult partners all day, it was better to treat Li Nanheng better. She only came to see his injury. She did not want to offer herself up, nor did she want to make a deal with him. But what was this? Why was she suddenly kissed again? She was just ironing clothes. Feng Ling's mind was in a mess. When he finally let go of her, the woman in his arms was stunned and didn't come back to herself for a long time. She didn't drink at all, but she looked drunk and her cheeks were red. Feng Ling didn't know what to say. She didn't drink at all, but she looked drunk and blushed. You don't like it? He bit her earlobe, his voice low and husky. It was extremely sexy. Feng Ling was about to speak when the man chuckled softly. His smile was clear and hoarse. Why aren't you speaking? Why did you have to iron my clothes like a little wife? I couldn't help it. I forced myself not to pull you onto the bed. I just sat on the sofa and kissed you for a while. What's with your gaze? It's as if I've bullied you. I'm coaxing you like this. How do I look like I'm bullying you? As he spoke, he pressed her even more tightly in his arms, letting her feel the urgency somewhere in his body. Feng Ling's body immediately stiffened, and she quickly stood up. The man looked at her familiar appearance, and didn't want to feel all the changes in his body. He then looked at her red and swollen lips and messy hair, and couldn't help chuckling softly. He stroked her cheek, and his hot breath brushed against her face. If you have the patience to iron my clothes, why can't you have some patience to feel my heart for you? How long do you want to keep me cold? Feng Ling quickly stood up. Halfway up, she was pulled back into his arms by the man. This time, she did not sit on him but lay down in his arms. Chapter 1338. Li Nanheng hugged her, and was about to kiss her when the phone in the room suddenly rang. He paused and felt the warm and fragrant jade in his arms. He panted heavily, and his black eyes locked onto Feng Ling's face. She seemed to be still in a daze, but because of the ringing of the phone, her eyes instantly regained clarity. She quickly pressed her hands on his shoulders, and quickly stepped back to stand up. Li Nanheng let out a long breath. His handsome face was extremely dark at this moment. He picked up the phone and said grumpily, "Speak." The resort staff on the other end of the line could hear the unfriendliness in his tone. She was stunned for a moment and immediately said carefully, "Lee, Mr. Lee, the food and red wine in your room are ready. Should I send it over now, or do you want to come out to the restaurant to eat?" Hearing the word red wine, the displeasure in Li Nanheng's eyes lessened. "Send it over." "All right, I'll send it over right away. Sorry to disturb you, Mr. Lee." The other party carefully hung up the phone. Li Nanheng hung up the phone at the same time, and let out a sigh of relief. He lowered his head to look at the place where he was still arrogant, and turned to look behind him. He saw that Feng Ling had gone to the clothes again, as though nothing had happened. She picked up the ironing machine, turned on the switch, and lowered her head to continue ironing. She didn't run? Li Nanheng raised his eyebrows and hid the slight surprise in his eyes. He turned back to the bathroom, and simply washed his face with cold water. A few minutes later, someone knocked on the door. Yu Zheng came over with the staff who delivered the food. The staff pushed the dining cart with dishes that Li Nanheng and Feng Ling liked to eat. At the same time, it suited their tastes. There were also 2 bottles of red wine that were more than 9 years old. If they wanted red wine that was older, they would have to order more than 9 years old. This was not bad either. Li Nanheng nodded, indicating that they could leave. The staff member and Yu Zheng did not dare to look at Feng Ling. They all lowered their heads and silently retreated. Li Nanheng glanced at the dining cart again. After all, we've lived together for too many years. Only you and I understand each other's tastes so well. Feng Ling had just turned off the ironing machine and picked up the ironed clothes. Hearing his words, she raised her eyes to look over. When she saw the food on the dining car, she understood what he was talking about. Didn't you say you wanted to eat together? We have to eat something that both you and I can eat. She didn't avoid the topic and turned to hang up the clothes again. It's ironed. Try it on the next time you wear it. If you can still wear it, then wear it. If you can't, then dispose of it. You ironed it yourself. Even if I can't wear it, I have to wear it. The man pushed the dining cart to the dining table and placed the dishes on the table one by one. Feng Ling went over to help. After putting it away, Li Nanheng opened a bottle of red wine. In order not to let Feng Ling notice his intention to get her drunk, he poured her a small glass and said, "Try it. How does it taste?" Feng Ling saw that the red wine was only at the bottom of the glass, so she picked it up and drank it. After tasting it, she said, "It's very delicious." Really? Li Nanheng poured himself a glass and tasted it. It was indeed not bad. He asked her, "Do you want more?" Feng Ling glanced at him. "You ordered 2 bottles and asked me if I wanted more." The man smiled, but he smiled because this girl would never escape his trap. He poured her more than half a glass and carefully reminded her, "Drink slowly. Don't drink too fast." Feng Ling did not speak. She sat down and picked up the cutlery. Without saying much, she ate as though she was about to leave. Li Nanheng did not say much. The entire dinner was very peaceful. The dishes tasted good, and the taste was what both of them liked. Li Nanheng drank a lot of the 2 bottles of wine. Feng Ling saw that he did not seem drunk. With his alcohol tolerance, it was indeed not easy for him to get drunk. But her alcohol tolerance was, however, this wine was really delicious. Although her alcohol tolerance was not good, the more she tried to control herself from drinking, the more she couldn't control herself when she encountered such delicious red wine. Li Nanheng knew that Feng Ling's alcohol tolerance was not good, so he did not urge her to drink. He just sat there and drank slowly. During this period, Feng Ling also poured 2 glasses for herself. After 2 glasses, she seemed to be controlling herself and did not touch it for a long time. However, seeing that Li Nanheng had drunk more than half of the wine, she couldn't help but pour another glass and sip slowly. She was like a child who knew that she could not eat too much sugar, but was afraid that it would be bad to eat too much, so she could only take small bites. She was so cute that Li Nanheng felt his heart ache. In the end, Feng Ling almost drank half of the 2 bottles of wine. She realized that she had drunk a lot. The bottle of red wine was not small, and the capacity was not small. She immediately put down the wine glass and did not dare to touch it again. She turned to drink the soup. Li Nanheng sat quietly opposite her. He had been eating and drinking well. He just looked at her quietly. Feng Ling's face turned red. She suddenly put down the cutlery, stood up and said, "I'm done eating. I'm going back." Li Nanheng still sat in his original position. He crossed his arms and quietly watched her turn to walk out. The direction of her walking was very accurate, directly toward the door. Her steps were very steady, but the video was a little straight. The man raised his eyebrows. "Feng Ling, N." Feng Ling did not look back, nor did she stop walking. She was almost at the door. "How old are you this year?" the man suddenly asked. Feng Ling was about to leave, but she was suddenly stumped by his question. She immediately stopped in her tracks, as though she was seriously recalling how old she was. Seeing that she was drunk again, The smile on Li Nanheng's lips deepened. He stood up and slowly walked over. Standing behind her, he lowered his eyes to watch her deep in thought, and then looked at her clear eyes that were staring straight at the wall. 20. Feng Ling thought seriously for a long time. 23 or 24. Anne, it's going to be my 24th birthday soon, the man said softly. So don't give me the cold shoulder anymore. Let's spend the rest of our lives together. What do you think? Feng Ling stood there for a long time, put down her hand, and did not speak. Li Nanheng raised his eyebrows and glanced at her again, only to see that the little woman suddenly turned to look at him with a displeased expression. Li Nanheng raised his eyebrows at her dazed but bright eyes. What's wrong? I'm not giving you the cold shoulder. Chapter 1339. Oh, I'm just angry. And then when will you calm down? The drunk little woman turned her head proudly. I don't know. Anyway, I haven't calmed down yet. Li Nanheng smiled and touched her fair little face. You've been angry for long enough. At that time, I just wanted to resolve the matter as soon as possible. I didn't expect that I would end the battle quickly and hurt you badly. I also blame myself, but didn't I come out with you now? Feng Ling ignored him. Li Nanheng still touched her face. Tell me, what do I have to do to appease your anger? Feng Ling stood there without moving, but she lowered her head slightly. No one knew what she was thinking. Seeing her seriously thinking, Li Nanheng stroked her chin with his hand and stood in front of her, blocking her way. At the same time, he felt it was funny. After Feng Ling was drunk, as long as she did not fall asleep, she usually looked the same as when she was sober. But in fact, every time her eyes and her state were obviously different. For example, her sharp eyes were very quiet and peaceful at this time. They were not dull, but they seemed to have returned to her own nature. They were very quiet, and her expression was also not aggressive. She would look at him and blink at him. Although she would lose her temper sometimes, at least she would not pretend to be cold to him. Especially when Feng Ling's eyes were open, because her eyes were clear and bright, her pupils were black and bright, and her gaze was often cold. People liked to look at her. However, when she closed her eyes, the outline of her face became much gentler, as though she was a little fairy who had fallen asleep, quiet and clear, as though she could not be violated by anyone. But the more he thought of Feng Ling when she was drunk, especially that time in Cambodia, that time, Li Nanheng seemed to have an indescribable excitement in his heart. For some reason, he had a premonition that he would be able to see the cute side of Feng Ling again. He pulled her back to the sofa, and then sat next to her, patiently waiting for her to say a way to appease her anger. But it wasn't easy for Feng Ling to sit so obediently next to him. It was absolutely impossible for him to do nothing. He had to do something to make him happy. He reached out to hold her in his arms, but Feng Ling sat there without moving, as if still trying to think of a way to appease her. After a long while, when the man leaned close to her ear and kissed her earlobe, she said softly, "It's really hard to survive in the business world. I don't think I'm suitable for this circle. Although the phone corporation can be maintained, it's not easy to maintain outside, especially when it comes to financing. It's very difficult." How hard is it? Li Nanheng gently patted her shoulder and lowered his eyes to look at the little woman, who was obediently held in his arms. Seeing that she did not resist, and let him do whatever he wanted, he smiled. I can learn a lot of business knowledge and learn how to manage a company, but I can't learn how to smile at others, nor can I learn how to interact with others. I heard that some partners like to touch their female partner's buttocks, Feng Ling said seriously. Although I've never seen such a scene, nor have I seen it at Jinwan's place. Jinwan's EQ is very high. She usually avoids such things, and she won't cooperate with those partners who have bad habits. But she has the capital, but I don't. Even if I know that the partner has bad intentions, I have to come to talk about financing. But I'm already here. But I can't put down my face and keep smiling. I think it's really difficult. With that, Feng Ling turned to look at him, her eyes filled with grievance. You shouldn't have let me leave the base. I don't have a way back now. I don't like to work in the business circle. I want to be myself. Li Nanheng's handsome and cold brows moved. He patted her shoulder and gently stroked her head. If he hadn't seen through everything, he wouldn't have rushed over to accompany her to Washington. I know, but the Feng family can't be destroyed. I know, but the Feng family can't be destroyed. This is your only home. Your parents are not here. If you're not willing to bear these burdens, I can accompany you. You only need to bear the title of the Feng Corporation in name. I can help you with everything, but you're not willing. Feng Linger said. The man patiently whispered in her ear. It's not too late now. As long as you're willing to nod, I can help you take over everything you don't like. You can still be yourself. No one will dare to force you, including me. But Grandpa and Grandma have high hopes for me. Feng Ling lowered her eyes. They're like you. They hope that I can be the towering tree of the Feng family. You can think of it this way. I have high hopes for you to support the Feng family with your own ability. But if you change your way of thinking and find a good husband with your own ability, and your husband accompanies you and helps you, the result will be the same, won't it? The two of them won't be disappointed. At the same time, they'll be very happy to be able to solve your life's biggest problem. The man persuaded her. Feng Ling was in a daze. Do you understand what I'm saying? Li Nanheng asked by her ear with a smile in his eyes. Feng Ling did not nod or shake her head. She just sat there quietly. Li Nanheng continued to lean close to her and said, Think about it. As long as the two of us get married, the Feng family and the Li family will be truly connected. With the Li family around, who dares to do anything to the Feng family? Who dares to ask you to smile at those partners who have bad habits? With me around you, a tree can still grow strong and healthy. You can clearly be in front of me, basking in the sunlight, but you have to be angry at me. You have to grow in the cold and gloomy canyon by yourself. Don't you feel tired? It's not that you can't go back to 11 base. It's just that you don't have that title anymore. Didn't I ask you to participate in the battle last time, when Jinwan was in trouble? You're no different from the people in the base. I'm doing everything for you. Can't you feel sorry for me? Why do you always leave me hanging like this? I've never treated any woman like this in my King life. Ugh. Feng Ling abruptly raised her hand to cover his mouth. Li Nanheng raised his eyebrows and looked at her. When he said that she was wrong, and that she was ignoring him, she refused to listen. She was so drunk, yet she still refused to listen to what she didn't want to hear. She even reached out to cover his mouth to stop him from speaking. What was wrong with him to have loved this evil woman for so many years? Chapter 1340. Li Nanheng took a deep breath in her palm. The pent-up emotions that he had been tortured by this woman for so many years suddenly surged up. She was bad, but he was worse than her. And so, Feng Ling trembled when the man suddenly licked her palm. She stared at him blankly. What are you doing? The man raised his brows. She did not move her hand away, and his actions were even more excessive. She quickly retracted her hands. Her face was already slightly red from the alcohol, and now it was even redder. She abruptly stood up and looked like she was about to leave. However, before she could take a step, Yuzheng knocked on the door. Feng Ling was stunned again. She suddenly turned back to look at Li Nanheng and said, Is Mr. Mike here again? Li Nanheng. It was obvious that Yuzheng was knocking on the door. He was probably preparing to come in and take away the dining car. Was her memory messed up after drinking too much? Or was it because the incident of hiding from Mr. Mike had left a deep impression on her? Then Feng Ling abruptly reached out to drag Li Nanheng, who was sitting on the sofa, and pushed him toward the bedroom. After entering the bedroom, she hurriedly pushed him onto the bed. Li Nanheng. Hide in. She pushed him onto the bed, lifted the blanket, and covered him with it. Then she turned back to look at the bedroom door. As though she was avoiding an enemy, she carefully ran down and locked the door. Then she returned to the bed and looked at the man who had revealed his head from under the blanket. She was about to speak when she suddenly froze. No, I should be the one hiding. Li Nanheng raised his brows and looked at the little cutie in front of him. He patted the spot beside him and made an inviting gesture. Yes, do you want to come in and hide? All right, she answered very quickly. After all, his arm was injured, but she was not. She nimbly took off her shoes and went to bed. She lifted the blanket and covered herself with it. She lay down beside him and held her breath to prevent others from discovering her. The quilt covered both of them in darkness. The air was thin and very quiet. They were too close. In such a narrow space with little air, Feng Ling's heartbeat could almost be heard. It was very quiet. It's hot too. The whole world seemed to be isolated by this quilt. But it also seemed like this kind of belonging gave people a strange sense of security. She stayed under the blanket for a while, but she didn't hear anything. She thought about it and quickly lifted the blanket to take another look. However, just as she raised her hand to lift the blanket, the man beside her, whose breathing had gradually become heavy, suddenly turned over and pressed her down. The blanket was still not lifted. In this dark and narrow space, it was a little stuffy and hot, but the man's scorching kiss pressed down without hesitation. Feng Ling lay motionless and accepted the man's kiss. She just looked at him in the darkness. Li Nanheng did not lift the quilt, but kissed her deeply under the stuffy quilt. Again and again, he teased her lips and tongue, deep, entangled, and reluctant to part. When Feng Ling struggled to push him away from the quilt, because she couldn't breathe, he seemed to have sensed her intentions in an instant. He did not let go of her, but lifted the quilt to give her space to breathe, and then deepened his kiss between her lips. You. Feng Ling could breathe normally. She pressed her hand against the man's chest, but her fingers gradually tightened. She did not push him away. The man's kiss gradually landed on her chin, gentle and affectionate. I thought you were going to sleep with me. Feng Ling blinked in the darkness. The lights in the bedroom were not turned on. Only the moonlight from the window fell in. But she could still see their eyes and faces clearly. Seeing that she did not move, the man used his uninjured arm to prop himself up and looked at her with deep eyes. I didn't want to kidnap you to the bed. You came up on your own. Tell me, if I let you go back at this time, how can I still be a F***king man? Feng Ling looked at him for a long time and suddenly raised her hand to push him hard. The moment Li Nanheng thought he was going to push her away, she suddenly turned over and pushed him down on the bed with force. Then she pressed on him. The bed was very soft. Whether she lay down or he lay down, it was very comfortable. Li Nanheng stared at her because she suddenly changed from passive to active. He did not do anything to her next. He just looked at her and slowly asked word by word, "What do you want to do?" "Sleep with you," Feng Ling answered straightforwardly. She suddenly bent down and sucked on his lips. Li Nanheng lay motionless, allowing this woman who was still inexperienced in kissing to suck on his lips. Clearly, during the half a year in the jungle, he had patiently taught her how to kiss to make him feel better every night. But all her intelligence was used in the base. She could not learn these things well, and was always clumsy when kissing. Just like now, in the business circle, she tried very hard to learn and adapt, but she was still not as good as when she learned those skills in the base. However, just this kiss that was so inexperienced that it almost hurt him, made the blood in the man's body boil. As Feng Ling kissed him hard, Li Nanheng felt that he should give her some encouragement. He raised his hand and placed it on the back of her head, pressing her head to prevent her from leaving. Just like this, their entanglement deepened. When Feng Ling's hand began to unbutton his shirt, the man gasped heavily because of her movements and gently bit her lips. "Little vixen, if you want to do it, move faster. Do you want to kill me?" Feng Ling unbuttoned his shirt as she kissed him. When the man's shirt was unbuttoned, she sighed against his lips as though she was relieved. Her hand stroked his well-defined and perfect chest, causing the man's muscles to tense as hard as stone. She imitated the way he usually kissed him and moved down bit by bit. She kissed his chin, then kissed his chin, and bit down bit by bit, kissed the man's protruding Adam's apple. Li Nanheng panted heavily and pressed his hand against her back, as though to prevent her from suddenly leaving. He held her tightly against him. Feng Ling could not get up, so she could only lie on his body and kiss him. When she suddenly sucked on the man's body, she suddenly heard the man's hoarse groan. Feng Ling blinked, and could not help but kiss his lips again. Chapter 1341. After kissing for a while, Li Nanheng's shirt was forcefully pulled open by her. Her own clothes were slightly messy, and her long hair was entangled between their necks. Several times, many strands of hair stuck to his lips. The man seemed to be very patient as he kissed her hair inch by inch. Just as Feng Ling and the man kissed on the bed for a long time, Li Nanheng was ready to move. He couldn't wait for her to take off her clothes and reached out to pull down her pants. Feng Ling suddenly opened her misty eyes, pushed him away, and sat up straight on the bed. Caught off guard by her push, Li Nanheng really fell onto the bed. He raised his head abruptly, and saw Feng Ling's expression, as though she had just woken up from a dream. His heart skipped a beat. She woke up so quickly? No. She sat there and suddenly said 2 words. Looking at her serious expression, Li Nanheng sat up, his shirt unbuttoned, and a large part of his chest was exposed to the air. He looked at the woman with a strange expression. I'm still angry. I can't be like this with you. Fortunately, she didn't suddenly sober up. She just suddenly remembered that she couldn't go to bed so casually. Li Nanheng didn't know whether to cry or laugh. He lowered his head to look at the obvious changes in his pants that couldn't be concealed. I've already been seduced by you like this, and you suddenly say you're still angry? Feng Ling didn't look at him. As though she didn't hear him, she turned to get off the bed. Damn it, he was like this now, and she wanted to leave? How could Li Nanheng let her go so easily now? Out of habit, he raised his right hand to carry her back. But Feng Ling pushed him away as though she had been electrocuted. She used too much force and slapped the gauze on his arm. In an instant, Li Nanheng couldn't hold it in and groaned in pain. Suddenly hearing his painful groan, Feng Ling abruptly turned back to look at him. Seeing that he still cared about her, Li Nanheng held his arm and fell on the bed, as though he was in so much pain that he curled up on the bed and kept shouting, "Aya, it hurts, it hurts, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing him yelling in pain, Feng Ling's expression of, "I can't let him touch me again," gradually turned slightly worried. She hurriedly looked around, found the bedside lamp, and turned on the wall lamp in front of the bed. With the help of the light, she saw that the gauze on his arm seemed to be bleeding again. Startled by the blood, she rushed over to pull his hand. However, before she could touch his hand, the man retracted his hand and continued to hug his arm as he lay on the bed in pain. The worry in Feng Ling's eyes became even more obvious. She must have forgotten that the gauze on his arm was bandaged by her. After being drunk, her memory was so messed up that she didn't know how his hand was injured. But right now, she did look very worried. Li Nanheng called out for a while. When he turned to see her expression, he couldn't bear to see her like this. He simply sat up, gathered his shirt that she had just torn apart, and slowly covered the bloody gauze with the cuffs of his shirt. He looked at her. "Are you still leaving?" Feng Ling looked at him gloomily, and then at his arm. She didn't dare to approach but was worried about his arm. "Why are you in a daze? I can't carry you now. Come over yourself." As he spoke, he pointed to the bed with his chin. "Sit down." Feng Ling glanced at him and sat down again. Li Nanheng calmed his emotions and glanced at the seat under his eyes. He sighed slightly and moved over to sit by her side. He lowered his eyes to look at her quiet appearance. "You suddenly remembered that you're still angry, so you have to stay so far away from me? Aren't your principles a little too strong?" Feng Ling still did not speak, but glanced at his arm from time to time. "Why? Does your heart ache?" he asked with a low chuckle. His voice was still a little husky, but because of his gentle tone, it also seemed to have a bewitching intent. "It's good that you're not at the base. Otherwise, you'll always be injured." She sat there, looking at his arm as if she didn't hear what he said. She just muttered to herself, "When you fight, you always use your arm to block." That's why, other than the occasional gunshot wounds on your body, your arm is the one that gets hurt the most. There were a few times when your arm was almost crippled. Hearing her suddenly say this, Li Nanheng did not speak and only looked at her. I still remember once when I was dressed in women's clothes in a bar. The gang that was about to be surrounded by us suddenly opened fire and almost injured me. You suddenly protected me. At that time, you were also grazed by a bullet here and bled a lot, she muttered. But at that time, I was still a boy, she continued. Speaking of this matter, Li Nanheng smiled and sighed. You still have the cheek to say that? I was turned gay by you. And then you forcibly turned straight by you. Oh, Feng Ling looked at him again, and then at the small tent under his pants. What is bent? What is straight? Li Nanheng. Seeing her curious eyes, Li Nanheng pulled the quilt over his pants to avoid being stared at by her, and lectured her seriously. You shouldn't have disguised yourself as a man to sneak into the base. If I had known that you were a little girl in the orphanage when you entered the base, perhaps I would have made an exception and accepted you. After all, your skills and agility are not bad. Rules are dead, but people are alive. I can change the rules, but you can't lie to others. Do you know that you've been disguised as a man in the base for so many years? Thousands of brothers have been deceived by you. And I have also been deceived by you for several years. Under your influence, everyone in the base lives like thousands of idiots. Are you very proud of yourself? Li Nanheng's tone sounded harsh and reproachful. Feng Ling looked at him, then at his arm, and then at her own hand. It seemed that she suddenly realized where she got the courage to pretend to be a man in a place with so many men. Seeing her eyes, Li Nanheng lectured her with a serious expression. Do you remember how much you cheated in the base? Did I punish you? In the end, he still protected you. Have you ever thought about how bad it was for you to lie one after another? Hearing this, Feng Ling sat up straighter by the bed and lowered her head. Clearly, she knew she was wrong and was humbly accepting his advice. This woman had always been the one with a serious, cold face and disdain for everything. It was only after she drank that she could be so cute and obedient and let him bully her. Li Nanheng crossed his arms and still looked at her with a serious expression. In fact, he was almost injured from holding back his laughter. Begging for monthly votes. Chapter 1342. Li Nanheng really liked Feng Ling when she was drunk. The moment she got drunk, all the difficulties that Li Nanheng had faced over the years were swept away. It was as though they had found a place to vent the energy that they had not released before. He looked seriously at Feng Ling, who was humbly accepting his teachings, and pointed to his heart. I'm a man. I'm holding my heart in front of you. So sincere and so passionate. How do you treat me? Don't you know what you're doing? Feng Ling nodded. Did she mean that she knew what she was doing? If she really knew what she was doing, would she treat him like this? Li Nanheng glanced at her. Did you understand what I said just now? Feng Ling nodded, paused, and then shook her head. Li Nanheng. He knew it. Li Nanheng suddenly grabbed her hand domineeringly and pressed it against his chest. She blushed as though she was scalded and hurriedly pulled her hand away. He refused to let go and said in a low voice, I knew you were always like this. You can muddle through everything, but you can't do it with me. You stole my heart for 11 years and hurt it. You have to find a way to make it up to me. You can't just slip away. Anyway, you're mine, remember? Seeing Feng Ling nod again, Li Nanheng let go of her hand in satisfaction. Feng Ling looked at him and asked seriously, So, is it your heart that's hurt? Of course. Otherwise, can it be my stomach? Oh. Feng Ling looked at him and pointed at his heart. She suddenly raised her hand and searched around her body. In the end, she took out a small woman's wallet, took out a bank card from it, and handed it to Li Nanheng. Then I'll pay you. Li Nanheng. Every time she got drunk, she would give bank cards everywhere. Who taught her this bad habit? Li Nanheng said, What I hurt is my heart. Why are you compensating me? Feng Ling insisted, and stuffed the bank card into his arms. But I have nothing except this. Li Nanheng's heart seemed to be pierced by an arrow. After a pause, he picked up the card. It was actually a gold card with a credit limit of more than 5 million yuan. As expected of CEO Feng, he's so generous. As he spoke, he directly accepted the card, then raised his eyebrows and looked at her. Since you're so generous, I can't go against my conscience and accept this money. But if you insist, I'll accept it. However, I can promise to do 2 things for you. Tell me, what do you want to do the most right now? Unexpectedly, as soon as he finished speaking, Feng Ling suddenly reached out and snatched the gold card from his hand. No. Li Nanheng watched as she carefully put the card back into her wallet. What's wrong? Feng Ling looked aggrieved and embarrassed. She shook her head silently and put her wallet back into her pocket listlessly. She looked a little disappointed. Li Nanheng raised his eyebrows. Didn't you want to give me the card just now? Why aren't you giving it to me now? You know that I'm sad, and now you're not even bothered to give me this little material compensation? You're going to go all out, aren't you? Feng Ling glanced at him. I don't have enough money right now. This money is for the company's meals and salaries. Li Nanheng did not speak for a long time. He just looked at her and said after a moment, So? Didn't you ask how to appease my anger? And, how about this? I won't give you the money. If you help me do 2 things, I'll appease my anger. What is it? The first thing is to help me beat up Feng Mingyi. Feng Ling looked at him carefully. Li Nanheng understood that she wanted him to help her get rid of that troublesome brat. After all, her path in the business circle was not very smooth. With her current strength, it was indeed not easy to deal with Tianming. However, she wanted to be strong. From the Feng Corporation's perspective, she could not show weakness. However, she did not have any external help. It was indeed difficult for her to rely on herself. You finally thought it through? I thought you were planning to fight with him, and then come to me with your face covered in dirt. You should have come to me directly when you felt that something was wrong. Even if it was just a simple sentence, I would have immediately stood up for you, loved you, and protected you. Why did you insist on acting tough until now? You couldn't sleep well for days and nights, and you only dared to show your weakness to me after drinking too much? The man looked at her, and his tone was indifferent. It was clear that he had finally heard what he wanted to hear. He was satisfied, but at the same time, he wanted to open her brain and see if her entire body was made of stone like her heart. As though not hearing his words, Feng Ling lowered her head and said, There's one more thing. Speak. Help me think of a way to raise 1 billion yuan. Li Nanheng raised his brows. Oh, didn't you want to bet with me? I can't beat you. I'll definitely lose. Feng Ling pinched her own fingers. Her tone sounded a little embarrassed. Oh, so if you lose, you'll marry me. Feng Ling suddenly raised her eyes to look at him. After looking at him for a while, Feng Ling's face became redder and redder. Finally, she couldn't hold on any longer. She lowered her head in defeat and pinched her fingers as she said, I promise I'll return that 1 billion yuan to you within 3 years. The important thing is when you'll marry me. It has nothing to do with that 1 billion yuan. You're my wife, and my net worth is all yours. I don't care if you want to return it for the rest of your life. The man stared at her little face. After you lose, will you really marry me? Feng Ling did not speak but glared at him. Let me get that 1 billion yuan first. Tisk, you're still talking about conditions when you're drunk. Li Nanheng said. All right, let's not talk about marrying or not. I'll help you with the 1 billion yuan financing and helping you. Let's change the game. I'll ask and you'll answer. Don't hide anything. Unexpectedly, Feng Ling misunderstood his words. She suddenly said yes, and then grabbed his uninjured arm. Let's go out to play now. Li Nanheng said. Let's go out to play now. Li Nanheng. Play. Play what? Seeing that she was in a hurry to go out, and kept urging him to hurry up, Li Nanheng could only get up and button his shirt. He picked up 2 coats, put one on himself, and put the other on her. Then he was forcefully dragged out of the resort villa by Feng Ling. After arriving outside, Feng Ling bypassed the swimming pool, the hot spring, the gym, and all the normal entertainment facilities. On the way, she ran into the boss of a business partner. When he saw the 2 of them, He quickly greeted them. Before Li Nanheng could reply, he was dragged away by the drunk little Feng Ling. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.